Instagram and TikTok flood you with 10-second horoscopes, clickbait. No depth, no truth. People beg for the Leo King to do it, and I only ride out when it's gotten bad.
One man's riding, truth in hand. Leo King's the last to stand. Eyes wide open, fire inside, cut through shadows.
Your feed floods you with 10-second horoscopes, clickbait, no depth, no truth.
Instagram and TikTok flood you with 10-second horoscopes, clickbait. No depth, no truth. People beg for the Leo King to do it, and I only ride out when it's gotten bad.
One man's riding, truth in hand. Leo King's the last to stand. Eyes wide open, fire inside, cut through shadows.
Your feed floods you with 10-second horoscopes, clickbait, no depth, no truth.
Astro gimmicks, shallow lore, false predictions, spreading more. Leo King, he won't pretend. Real astrology to defend. Stars align to guide his way, standing strong, won't betray. Loud and clear, his message rings. Authenticity he brings. Leo King rides into the fire. Crusader taking it higher. Breaking chains of fake desire. Burn the false race, truth's empire. No illusion, just what's real. Passion, border, heart of steel. Ride forever, never tired. Lead us on through smoke and fire. Leo King rides into the fire, truth crusader taking it higher, breaking chains of fake desire, burn the false race, truth's empire. Ride on, Leo King lead the way. Ride on, brighter every day. Ride on, fighting false attire. Ride on forever into the fire.
What's going on, everyone? It's David Palmer, Leo King, and Dr. Ann Wohlcke here with History in the Stars, our first episode in 2026, going even deeper into Neptune's re-ingress into Aries and the Civil War history, the United States of America Civil War history. What's going on, Ann? How are you on try number 2? I think we got my audio back.
I think I'm okay. I was going to say, wow, David, long time no see. It's been forever. But here we are again, trying again. I don't know what's going on with the audio issues and everything else. And you said Verizon had an outage today. Well, I do. But anyway, what would astrologically, is there anything going on that's causing this, or is it just us?
No, this was totally just in the studio problem.
Okay.
I use all these DAWs, these digital audio things that if you use these mics and you're in a studio, it's going to hear, because you have to pump these up.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll pick up background sound. Right now, it just gets our voice. There's no background and it's crisp and clear. That is not done easy.
Right.
Live stream. So like Joe Rogan doesn't do live stream. Why? He records them just raw and then they afterwards edit the sound fixes.
Mm.
I'm doing this and processing it live through DAWs live.
Okay.
So
it's doing a lot.
And live streaming at the same time and multiple cameras too and everything, right? So that's what you notice is why most people don't live stream a podcast that sounds super crisp like a real podcast is because they don't get it yet. And we're in 2026. So this is like kind of old, but that's why. So when one of the 6 different DAWs goes bad,
right,
the whole thing will collapse. And because everybody has different vocal, how loud they speak into a mic, I have all these AI settings to where it's bringing the attenuation to the correct levels. So if I speak louder than you, or if somebody backs away a little bit far, all these things have to be taken into account.
Oh, so
to have a proper live stream sound better than every TikTok video out there.
I kind of miss, I know it was also perfect, but the other studio, you could always hear, you knew if it was 9:30 because the Disneyland fireworks would go off and you'd always hear that in the background. I don't know if people could hear it over on YouTube, but we could always sit there and hear the fireworks going off. And that was kind of nice.
I mean, yeah, and here we're next to John Wayne Airport, and there's planes taking off and jets, crazy. And people don't hear it.
It is crazy. Mm-hmm.
A lot like it would have been like in the Civil War, hearing General Sherman come around. But that was a little bit later in the Neptune Aries. Just, but today we're going to go into taking away the writ of habeas corpus, which is probably, I think, just as high level historical, importance in reoccurrence astrology, because it's been, of course, used since Lincoln did, but Lincoln's the first president to use it. It's also very connected to Neptune and its ingress into Aries, and it was used throughout the war multiple times, and it also was used, I think, in the ways that we're going to show people today, that even the local generals would go into a local town and claim it. That it wasn't just, of course, the President of the United States. Also, how did that work with Congress? And when you think of where the world's at right now with Tim Walz, that guy, even doing the old kind of like, I'm making a day of unity and this is a proclamation I'm doing, and using very old terms of the foundings, right? That's exactly what the Confederates did. Like we're going back to the beginning, the Confederacy.
Right.
The Confederate States of America. And we're using the old terminology to bring it back. It's kind of weird to see. We did live stream, but there was an audio issue, but we were talking about at the very beginning how in the context of, what was it? It was about, it was so good. It was like so important. It was about, there was the Tim Walz thing. There was, what was it, Ann? It was
Venezuela?
No. It was something that in America was happening in the old days that is kind of reemerging now. The anti-federalist debate that both sides, Republicans always kind of seem in our lifetime as the more anti-federalist, but then at the same time they're not, with George W. Bush, who actually made a complete overhaul of federal oversight with the Homeland Security and right, which is very federalist. And then now you have Democrats playing anti-federalist.
And I was saying that what's interesting about that is the United States, as it was founded, was intended to not ever be personality based with your president, right? That it's the office, and you could have, in theory, you could have these ideas of being federalist or anti-federalist. And it was the principle of, should the national government have more power or should it have less power? Should the states have more power relative to the national government, right? And now we're in this situation where, and it's been happening for quite a while, that it's, if you don't like the president, you don't want the president to have more power. But also you've got both sides doing things like using executive orders. So it's an interesting time. I feel like there aren't any textbook definitions anymore of the political sides. We've shifted into something different.
Right.
So, or it's currently shifting.
How would you feel, because you are a historian? Is there anything, like, as we're in this shift, what in history do you think is like something that you've seen similar in your lifetime that feels like a reoccurrence of an historical event that mirrors a lot of an historical event in our lifetimes? Like, or would you really think the last 6 years kind of is the mirror of so many historical events at the same time that it's like overwhelming?
I don't know. It is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. I'm sitting here thinking, what one event or what events have been echoes? In the last definitely 5 years or 6 years, how long have we been sort of doing this show? 6 years.
Yeah, longer, actually.
So at the very beginning, I remember sitting there at the beginning of doing this show and thinking, and here was the funny thing, when Craig and I were sitting and we were working on the documentary on King James, right? And then thinking of trying to do something also on the Salem witch trials. I remember that. And Craig's idea was always, David should be able to look at a chart blindly and tell you what the historical event was, because there was sort of like this, and I would always think, yeah, wouldn't that be interesting if he could look at the chart and tell you exactly what are the things we didn't see about those times that could be seen in the charts. And I kind of just innocently thought, yes, history does repeat, and you can see the ways in which it's repeating. But then I started to learn more about astrology and to learn how there's so many factors at play. There's so many shifting factors, and that kind of goes into your Hypergate idea, right? That you want to look for, like when you're looking over broad historical periods of time, you have to look for when things really sync up. And yes, there are reoccurrences that happen, but it's like, in the last 6 years, I don't know, did that just stop happening? Because there's so many things repeating at the same time, and they're not really repeating. It's just the same trends are coming through. And it's like, you can't really identify exact things that are happening. But I feel like what we're trying to do is to isolate, well, this is a time that is a lot like now. And so we should see similar things happening, and they are. But they're so different because of so many factors, like other big astrological transits happening at the same time. So many people know so much about what's happening now. Like people can instantly know what's happening in another part of the world, which is unlike any other time in history,
Right.
or any other known time in history.
Well, I think it's interesting, since our last show, which was right before Christmas, and here we are just right after the New Year, Elon Musk came out and said, we're entering into the singularity, right? And so I think of the last 6 years. Oh, so the singularity is where more, whether you want to, there's a couple different versions. There's spiritual versions. There's also, of course, like more of the one that he's putting out, like when intelligence itself that is non-human, we call it AI. Is it really artificial? Because that's kind of a weird term if you think about it. It's intelligence. The whole universe is intelligence, including a computer. Mm-hmm. But that, let's say AI, that intelligence will be more than our intelligence, right? It's also a timeline thing too, where everything is converging into one timeline. But I think that the singularity event, the way that I look at it, is why the 6 years are relevant is like you have the Revolutionary War, the Pluto and Capricorn at the end, right? So America went through a Pluto return. Then you add Neptune coming in Aries, the Civil War. And so you see the effects of people in America going through both. Now we're adding Uranus and Gemini, which are connected to both and World War II, right? So now you're adding that level on. Then you add on Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, because all these major conjunctions. So it's like, then you add, that's before the Civil War, the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction of 1856. We had that in 2022. And that is where you start seeing a lot of similar events that the Democrats were very federalist under Biden, right? It was like, everybody get a vaccine, everybody do this, right? Like, so both sides do the federalist thing when they want, and then both sides are against it when they don't like it. But the events now are to such an extreme with all these outer planets that are moving signs and all these major conjunctions coming to an end, right? This is the last year of the big conjunctional astrology. Saturn, Neptune meet February 20th, and then there's not big conjunctions for a long time, right?
Right.
So it'll be like Saturn in Chiron and eventually Saturn and Uranus, right? But that's a while away. So it's not where every year we've had a major conjunction with Saturn or an outer planet or Jupiter and these outer planets and so forth. So we're at a big ending of that portal, and it feels like everything's happening at one time. So it feels like it's Civil War in America while a revolution at the same time, while a World War II energy that's building up, with the debt being the exact same debt to GDP ratio, and the bank, and then the Federal Reserve and the Treasury doing the same weird kind of moves that eventually the Treasury was in control of the Fed during World War II to get rid of the debt and bringing the interest rates down to nothing.
Right.
It's all happening at the same time. That's what I look at the singularity event is. But the way that other people are looking at it is that, basically, like, we're all kind of, the intelligence is all kind of like hitting this maximum critical mass moment that's all kind of converging into one at one moment. Or you could look at it as more AI intelligence will be used and more intelligent than humans.
But the interesting thing about that, as you were talking about the AI and, it's converging to become a new type of intelligence. The thing is that AI is only human intelligence on steroids, really, right? Like, it's human intelligence, as much as we know, input into the programs to help us level up our knowledge and what we can know. But it is based on the best, or it should be based on the best human knowledge, but it could be based on the worst, whatever, right? It's based on everything we know being put into the program.
Right.
And then it's synthesizing human knowledge on a level that's never been done before. It's synthesizing human knowledge almost instantly. It's able to draw from all of the knowledge sources, synthesize it. Now it's building on this other layer of gatekeeping in particular ways that are being programmed into it. But it hasn't fully been unleashed. And I guess that's what's getting ready to happen, right? Because you talked about Brock turning it in, or letting the military use AI as well now.
Yes, that actually is turning on this week or next week. So I actually have this is the technical term, which was I was saying, right? It's the hypothetical future event where AI surpasses human intelligence, leading to a runaway technological growth and unpredictable fundamental changes to civilization. Which definitely is happening. I mean, just the new data confirmed at the end of 2025 of the internet itself, that 51% of the internet is bots, meaning artificial intelligence, bots, chats, comments, but that they're on the internet more doing things than human beings on the planet. And you have to think there's a lot of humans using the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already at a point to where that's happened on the internet itself.
Right.
And then AI uses the internet, but it also has a foundational element of all these data centers. So it's living in the cloud. There's cloud agents, there's cloud, and then there's the actual serving centers. And then the reason why people don't realize crypto is not really doing that great is because everything is going towards AI being worth more than crypto, because crypto uses the same GPUs, but AI's growth is so much more powerful for humanity, right? Giving people the ability to do things quicker and do that, it's more of a utility than just digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you're going to see that phase out of like people really caring about it as much, because of the fact that you go with wherever the data is wanted more and whatever that the GPUs and the chips can do in the data centers. And the data centers aren't being built for crypto. They're being built for AI.
Yeah. Well, I think clearly this is the future, right? I mean, clearly we are at that moment of singularity. And I think so much of our world right now, this is what I was trying to show when we tried to go live first. And then I was stuck trying to say all these things because I had to do a monologue. But we're at that point where we're in the new world, right? And we need the resources to be able to fuel that world. And so much of needing the resources to keep it running are governing our global politics right now. Right. And I think that's the other aspect to this, is that at the same time the Civil War was happening, there was a communications and technology revolution afoot.
Big time.
Right. And the way that the world was operating in the 19th century was increasingly depending upon being able to have quick, reliable communication or transportation, right, to facilitate communication, and then to be able to have the telegraph and to communicate almost instantly, to be able to communicate reliably over long distances. So there was so much of an effort at trying to find the materials to facilitate that world, right? People needed to have iron. They needed to be able to create steel. They needed to have coal. They needed to have copper to also facilitate communications and the telegraph cables, and all of that. And so in order to do all those things, you needed land, you needed mining, you needed people who knew how to mine. You needed workers who would be industrial workers in corporations in the United States, in factories in the United States, because in the 19th century, the United States wanted to become more of a world leader, and they were importing iron in order to make steel. They were importing most of their copper. They had some reserves. But all of a sudden in the 19th century, they take off on, let's acquire all this land, right? Like I had this one, this overview just of, we start getting territory more in the 1840s, right? And then also Alaska by 1867. So I think those are the most important ones in terms of thinking of mineral extraction from a lot of those places. The other thing is, let me see.
Yeah, and it's a lot of territories, and they're not states yet. And the Civil War really starts because of the territorial disputes over becoming states and rigged elections, whether or not they want to be free states or slave states.
Right.
And that's actually the real tinder fire that starts the whole Civil War. People think it's about slavery. The big part of it is, but it actually started more in these territories that were going to become states. And then the government was giving people incentives to go there, to go like work and build. But like people were voting about what they wanted, and then the slave state people that wanted the slave state were killing people, and the border ruffians, as they were called, right? And they were rigging elections, and then they were Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
So California was a Democrat state, and it flipped in the 1860 election, and it stayed with the Union. Of course, it was so far away, there was no slaves there. But it's kind of interesting because it's also about work, if you think about that with slaves. And now we're at Neptune and Aries, and everybody's tripping about, well, am I being replaced?
Yeah. A lot of it is about the transition of labor, right?
Yeah.
Labor markets, labor, like who's going to do the work, but also what is going to be doing the work, what will be the work. And I mean, at this time also, like I said, there was all this immigration as well. Like if you look at this, actually shows migration from 1700 to 1900, and a huge part of it is Irish immigration, although it's not necessarily showing that, and coming into the east coast of the United States, and they're going into those textile mills and creating cotton and cloth, because that was one of our leading exports in the 19th century. But that starts to shift towards things like mining. And the interesting thing about that is that they go to where is this thing? If I have a map, I think actually the Lake Superior region.
Oh, right.
Where this is where so much copper mining is going to happen. And that is also very close to where Tim Waltz is, right? And so much, I just think it's interesting, because then I was looking up copper, right? So could we have a resurgence as well of wanting to increase our copper mining? And I did find an article talking about this push to, let me see if I can find it. This push to boost, AI to boost copper demand 50% by 2040, but more mines are needed to ensure the supply. So, I mean, again, copper is going to be a big part of this whole thing as well. And so then, it's not an accident too that we're looking for new territories at this time in the rest of the world, these mineral rich areas. So
I think it's interesting because labor is a big part of it. Of course, the economy, but, looking at the Civil War, of course, we've covered this already, but this one's, I think, that getting rid of the writ of habeas corpus, right?
Yes.
That's a big part. But yeah. I do want to bring up that Tim Waltz thing because I just typed his name in.
Okay.
One of the things that came last week was he literally said that this was a civil war. And then he actually got the history incorrect, which is really weird. Right? So, to clarify this correctly, he did a warning order to the National Guard about ICE agents being in his state. And his term about the or what he said in his speech about the Civil War, he got it wrong, which is kind of weird. I'm trying to look for the actual, because I don't want to watch the video. I just want to see the words. Let's just try and get the Civil War quote. In speech in January 2026. I'm just using Google's stupid AI here. The worst model ever made.
He issued a warning order. I know.
Yeah. But so he gave a warning order. From in speech, I just was like, come on, give me the actual quote. He actually said Civil War. Then today he just had articles of impeachment brought up against him in his own state, the state Senate. And then he just made some big speech, death during federal governor's response to federal operations. Walt said that President Trump posted online this week promising the day of retribution and reckoning is coming, which the governor calls a direct threat against the people of the state. I mean, this is Civil War talk for real. This is right now and an hour ago. And he went on to say community members have an absolute right to peacefully film ICE agents as they conduct their activities in the effort to create a database of the atrocities against Minnesotans. Walt said the state is working with business leaders, faith leaders, legal experts, and elected officials from across the country who know their states could be next. This sounds so Jefferson Davis-y. But it really we have to remember, yeah, Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy, right? But it's like it was the governors of the states that made the choices.
Right.
So maybe that's the presidency that Newsom's going for.
The Jefferson Davis.
The Jefferson Davis, yeah, of the new Confederacy. All right. And then finally, the governor called Minnesota an island of decency in a country being driven towards cruelty. A place of decency, of justice, of community, of peace. It's very similar. But
yeah.
I really, I can't believe like they're trying to like, it sucks because I don't have to use freaking ChatGPT for this. Like Tim Waltz says Civil War in January 2026, speech. I need the speech with the quote in it. And I'm going to do just web search with that, with heavy thinking on. Okay. Like,
You just want the quote.
And it's like so crazy that, you can't even use Google to find crap anymore. Right.
And I have a few things that come up, and then it's on Facebook, and I am not currently logged in. Governor Waltz compares ICE protesters to Union troops in the Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about like that it was the Minnesota regiment that is what kept Gettysburg for the Union together, right?
That's what
that whole entire battle is not dependent on that piece. And then the way that he frames it, he's doing what the Southern governors did back in 1861 and going against the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he's trying to relate with being on the right team of 1861, but he's doing the actions of the South.
Yeah. But I think another thing that's, as you're looking for that or waiting for this, another thing that is similar about it would be how, you also did research before this. We were looking at newspapers and how they presented Lincoln as a tyrant around this time as well.
Yeah.
And to me, what's similar is this, that it's, there are issues where states in the Civil War were feeling infringed upon, that their rights as members in a confederacy, they viewed it as their rights being infringed on. And the issue really was that Buchanan had already been dealing with that, can the national government force states to stay in the Union, right? That was the issue. And that's the thing that we'll be looking at, right? So
Texas has a clause that they can leave. Right.
Well, and other people don't, right? But the interesting thing is the way it was inflamed in the Civil War. If you just look at it from that perspective, that the fear was this federal overreach, and that was inflamed. And today, there's this massive press coverage of ICE protests, like a lot of coverage, and this unfortunate incident that happened in Minnesota.
I mean, I hate to say it, in the Civil War, it would be like a Union soldier walking through Atlanta, Georgia, And what would they call them? Get those Yankees out of here.
Right. Or if
Right, because that's
if
how
Atlanta was occupied at that point, or I don't know.
Even if it wasn't, just as they saw a Union soldier, or they just are saying them Yankees, because most people aren't directly seeing an ICE agent.
Right.
Like the majority of the country is not directly seeing an ICE agent, unless you're in Minnesota, California, certain cities in California. So in Minnesota or Minneapolis in Minnesota, or you're in they were in Portland too recently, right? Like Chicago, right? So like not the whole country ain't seeing them.
No. And I've seen some foreign coverage where people in other places are thinking, what must it be like in the United States right now? Are they going to cancel the Olympics or the World Cup or whatever's coming first? Will we be in a civil war or whatever? And I'm thinking, wow, I'm missing out on the news. Is something really big happening? And I looked, and it's no, because it is probably like the Civil War, where the majority of people are carrying on their lives and we don't see it. But so many people fear this now because of the constant coverage. And I guess that, or not, I don't know if it's constant, but because those images are out there and continuously being presented. And yeah.
It's interesting. It reminds me of there's a big part about Saturn, and that's going to be in conjunction with Neptune here in Aries at 0 degree. And so I found it really hilarious, actually, that Governor Walz signed July 23rd, 2020, if a driver accelerates towards an officer standing in front of the vehicle, this creates an immediate life-threatening danger. The officer doesn't need to wait until impact. They can, based on the apparent intent, they can act based on the apparent intent and proximity. Right. So again, this is about the laws.
Yeah, but so many people in today's world are ignorant about laws.
Now they're saying,
and the fact that each state has different laws.
This is where I guess the revisal Minnesota status is unauthorized use of deadly force by peace officers. So what's weird is we live in a world where you know how easy it is to change a website on the way you want to.
Yeah.
It's not have a Wayback Machine on it. Like but I don't even know. I haven't even looked now into that whole part, right? So I guess a peace officer shall not use deadly force against a person. Although these are peace officers, where this is federal agents. So there's a huge difference. Right. So those are for their own state police. But this is a federal agency that has oversight. Doesn't matter what state it is, because these are laws and codes that are part of the U.S. codes of our laws.
Yeah.
So that's what the whole debate of the Civil War was about, state or the Union. And that's what's crazy to me, is that I can't believe this has been the hard. There, I got it. I got the quote. Okay. He does say this Civil War.
Gettysburg. See, this is where it's interesting.
But he says Civil War. When things looked really bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation in the Civil War. I don't know why they're not giving the whole quote. July 3rd, 1863. CNN transcripts. Oh, thank God. So.
Civil disobedience.
Is this even the right transcript? I think this is January 8th. I mean, it's kind of crazy to be like, what? Like, where? I guess we'll use the Gettysburg reference here.
Yeah. You know, the other thing that I wanted to mention about that is earlier we were talking about how ICE, the deployment of ICE. So I guess if immigration is the issue, it could be taken care of probably in a quieter way than bringing ICE into these kinds of situations that are inflaming protests and making it explode. It's almost like it's both sides wanting to create some kind of spectacle out of the whole situation, where it makes me wonder, when Buchanan was president and state and Fort Sumter, or the states like South Carolina were threatening to pull out of the Union, but then also keep the federal resources and ports. He sent a group to rearm Fort Sumter. And I think it was turned back. I'm not sure. I don't know the whole history of that. But I was just thinking, I wonder if when the federal government started to think, oh, we better support our federal holdings in these different states because people are threatening to secede and we don't want to lose all of our weapons and all of our money, whatever it was. But did they do it in a way that was a spectacle? Like, did they go in the middle of the day and like try to arrest everybody who was there and make a big spectacle out of it, or not? Because I'm sure in the press, it would be covered like, watch out, your rights are about ready to be taken away. And they would have shown it in the most dramatic way possible.
Right.
Because I think that's what we're seeing a lot of.
What I think the parallel is really in is right here. So AI, of course, got it wrong. Is where Tim Malt said on January 7th about the National Guard, right? And then he's preparing with a warning the National Guard. I was just reading it. Here we are. Okay. And our First Amendment rights. Okay.
Even he says, I'm sorry, they want to show.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's this idea of that our rights are being taken away. But then
we will not take the bait.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Then these actions result in fines. This whole like 7,500. There we go. So this is where he goes into the troops. Yeah. I issued a warning to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have troops in training and prepared to deploy if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community. They're business owners. They're construction professionals. So this is the rally call to join the Confederacy movement, right? It's the locals. Like Uncle Sam has completely gone crazy.
Yeah.
They voted for a Republican, the first Republican president. Abraham Lincoln is a hardcore abolitionist, even though he wasn't, and even made a deal when he got in. Let's protect your guys' slavery in these states, but just no new states will ever be allowed to have slavery forward.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't happen. They wanted a war instead. What we're not seeing, though, is like, okay, if you're like California, you're a sanctuary state. You can stay one, but it's not a federal thing. That's what's so crazy. The federal law is you have to deport illegal immigration, right?
Yeah, that's where it gets twisted. It's just different, right?
Right. You could say, though, in the South, they had some leeway with the Supreme Court case of Dred Scott, and how, a slave in a free state is still the property owner of the state, where
Right.
the owner of the slave can pull his slave back and make him a slave.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But that's what's really interesting, is this whole rally everyone up. I mean, some people might not really be well with the history of the Civil War. Maybe you've seen Gone with the Wind or read the book, but the movie is amazing because The way that Scarlett O'Hara is talking with the guys at the porch at the very beginning of the movie, and how they're all waiting to see if the war is about to happen, Fort Sumter, right? And they're all dressed in their Confederate colored military outfits, right?
Because they were ready to go before Lincoln even became president.
Correct.
It started when he got elected.
Yeah. So in that back then, it was the longer period to wait until the inauguration. It was used to be in March. They moved it to January 20th later on because of the Civil War and other things, but a lot of it was because of that.
Right.
So like you have that, and then of course, let me see on this one if there's Gettysburg on here. Getting. I cannot believe I can't find this stupid Tim Maltz Getty's. Oh my gosh, really? Gettysburg, fucking. I guess it's on Facebook. Like, that's what's so weird. Tim Maltz has compared himself in the political standoff with ICE to the Battle of Gettysburg. Let that sink in. When things looked bleak, it was the Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation. Right? So what nation? Oh, okay. The Union. On July 3rd, 1863. And I think now we may be in that moment.
Right.
I mean, this was easy to predict astrologically.
But for him, when he says first held the line for the nation, he's meaning an alternative view of the nation being the humane people, the people he would see as agreeing with his perspective, right?
Yes.
It's not a legal definition. And I think that's something that's different about this era is we're not talking about real fixed entities. This is where it slips over into to the history of the French Revolution, which we've talked about before, where you had people fervently believing certain things about their position being correct, and then people coming into conflict with each other openly because of their beliefs, like what they believe the nation should be, because the nation in France had been dismantled, right? It was being dismantled. The kings eventually executed in France during the time of the French Revolution. And so there's this need to conceptualize what is a new nation, and it comes into conflict. So since we're at that Pluto and Aquarius moment, sort of, right? Aren't we? Hopefully I'm correct on that. It's almost like over the top of this Civil War thing is that the nation or union that we're all fighting for, supposedly, or people who are feeling like they need to fight, it's an ideological understanding of what the nation should be. Like people are fighting for figments in their imagination. It might be something that everybody believes in a group, right? It might have this momentum because it's become its own thing, because it's a lot of people believe in it, but it's not a legal entity. That's what's odd to me.
Here, here's some differences. The principle for which we contend is bound to reassert itself, though it may be at another time and in another form. All we ask is to be let alone. That's kind of the energy, right, of this. Let us do what we want. Let illegal immigration happen. Just leave us alone.
Died of a theory.
That's an interesting one. I worked day and night for 12 years to prevent the war, but I could not. The North was mad and blind, would not let us govern ourselves, and so the war came. Garfield's assassination attempt made the whole nation care. I guess that was that's after the Civil War. the last Republican president that was in the run for that 20-year run after the Civil War. So that's Jefferson Davis on his like deathbed, basically.
He died.
That's an interesting quote, though. The war must go on till the last man of this government falls in his tracks. Unless you acknowledge our right to self-government, we are not fighting for slavery. We are fighting for independence, and that or extermination we will have. That's really scary because Tim Walz is almost near that line already, right? Like it's this dire. We are losing everything over this ICE situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, I just found out through the internet yesterday, it's like a lot of these, the reason why this woman died, Renee Good, right, is because she's white, because they send the white people out there because they think that they'll be treated differently than somebody who's black. But now they're like, now that they killed a white woman, it doesn't matter. But these ICE agents don't, it's like, if you're in a car and you backed up and you're driving at a person, you're going to try to stop that person. And I'm sorry if your brain doesn't think quick enough to shoot a tire instead of what's coming right at you. That's a very quick moment if you watch the video, like from the body cam.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter who's in the car.
And could I say something that to me seems obvious and like people should be thinking about what's going on is why is it that we need today? Why is it that the white woman getting shot is going to be the moment everybody thinks is like, oh no? Because, I mean, it makes me think of January 6th, because wasn't the woman who got shot a white woman, or the woman who got killed? And it was very much, it was very similar to me, the way that it played out. And then it's very tragic in both situations when somebody dies exercising what they think is
kill somebody.
Well, but the thing is that AOC thought she was, or
she was in the bathroom.
No, she was the wife. But I'm just saying that
the video is right there with Ashley Babbitt getting shot.
Yeah. But also, yeah, I mean, and in both cases, that video, it's like there's this attempt to use it to signify a greater moment. And in each case, it seems to me like it didn't become the big moment. I feel like in Minnesota, or the reason this continues to get shown is people are hoping everybody rises up and joins this movement. Otherwise, why? I mean, I don't know. To me, it just feels like for quite a few years now, there's been an effort to get us to all fight each other. And to me, I want to know why. And are there similar things happening today that people want to develop that might have been happening at that time? And I mean, there is. It's like there's a information revolution happening right now, like there was in the middle of the 19th century.
Yeah. And there's a relation with the immigration situation to almost like slaves back. It's back in Democrat states. Those states allow legal immigrants to work for below minimum wage and to do all the jobs that nobody wants to do that the Southerners had the slaves doing.
Right. And like, if you want to even go a little bit further into the 19th century, so there's Irish immigration, and Central European and other areas of England that come into the country to help facilitate mining in particular, right? It's the cotton textiles, but then eventually there are a lot of skilled miners that come, M-I-N-E-R, not M-I-N-O-R. I guess each era has issues with miners of different types.
There's a lot of problems about what's been happening to miners in whether it's coal miners or miners' children, you know?
So anyway, at this time, skilled mining was needed. Like we're trying to build up in the 19th century, our mining industries to support all these other things and steel making. And you need people who have skills.
They need little hands to get inside.
They do need little hands, but they also needed to know how to do this operation. Like I couldn't go and be a miner. I wish I could. I have dreams of going to the hills and finding gold, and that's that. Yeah, but I mean, it's like the whole thing. We focus on the gold rush, but it really wasn't that was the big deal about moving to the west or opening up some of these areas. But then, then you get all these skilled workers who know mining, and then they start to, or know steel work, right? They start to get too uppity and they demand more wages. And what happens? They bring in other groups who each group has already been taught to not like each other. So you bring in, or if these people go on a strike, they would bring in a lot of people who'd previously been slaves come into these regions and do the labor. And that creates hostilities between all of the people at the bottom. And so this is where I'm hoping we rise above it on some level.
I mean, this is some way.
All right, let's see.
So I'm going to replace these with illegal immigration instead of African slavery. Illegal immigration, as it exists in the United States, is a moral, a social, and a political blessing. That sounds exactly what you're hearing. 2, truth crushed to earth is truth still, and like a seed will rise again, as you were just saying, rise again. Right? Like, this war must go on. We did that one. My own convictions as to Negro slavery are strong. It has its evils and abuses. We recognize the Negro as God, and God's book and God's laws and nature tell us to recognize him, are inferior, fitted expressively for servitude. You cannot transform the Negro into anything 1/10 as useful, as good as what slavery enables them to be. Now, we haven't heard anything like that yet.
Right, that people should see. This is the thing also is, I think we've said this on other episodes, immigration's been an issue.
For a long time.
And what have the Democrats done to...
Well, in the 90s under Clinton, it was like they were on the side of closing the border, and Clinton's famous, State of the Union address of like, we are not going to allow legal immigration and all that.
Well, it depends on what people of the country want. Right. They'll switch. I mean, obviously it's about winning the election. They'll say whatever they want, but whatever people want. But I mean, it is just, these are these long-standing issues that in good faith, politicians haven't been trying to solve the issue. Instead, they would rather have these large spectacles to get everybody upset, to get people driving from one protest to another to go yell at whoever they're supposed to yell at this week, who embodies these national values that aren't really on a real nation. It's just these values that people somehow agree to absorb. I mean, I never get the memo. I never know exactly what I'm supposed to be believing for all these movements.
I think you're not supposed to really jump on them.
Yeah, it's been my perspective. Because
if it's really worth debating, it's supposed to be done in a civil way in Congress, who you elect, right? We're allowed to protest peacefully, but the problem with the Civil War was it's not peacefully, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're not happy with ICE coming in, right? But the laws all back that up, that every part of our country's history of elected officials for a century plus, let's say, we'll give it 100 years, have been to enforce that law. Well, you don't meet it with 7,500 National Guard troops on warning to go after our own federal government troops.
Yeah.
The same way that Jefferson Davis thought that, no, I'm going to do the Aries approach, not the Libra approach of debate.
Right.
right? And that's what the problem of Neptune and Aries is people feel like they can assert themselves to get what they want. And that there's a spiritual morality that's giving them the clause or the passability to do that, which there's not.
Oh, wow. And you have the perfect quote for that.
Yeah, let the gentleman go to Revelation to learn the decree of God. Let him go to the Bible. I said that slavery was sanctioned in the Bible, authorized, regulated, and recognized from Genesis to Revelation. Slavery existed then in the earliest ages and among the chosen people of God. And in Revelation, we are told that it shall exist till the end of time shall come. You find it in the Old and New Testaments, in the prophecies, Psalms, and the epistles of Paul. You find it recognized, sanctioned everywhere. What's scary is this is more of what comes out in the middle of the Civil War.
And that's what we're getting ready to go into.
Right. So like the Tim Waltz thing right now is the baby version. I know we did this about the writ of habeas corpus, but I feel like this whole Tim Waltz thing is nobody's talking about it from the astrology perspective. And if you look at his own chart,
you did do that. Did you do that on Full Disclosure with Natalie?
I think I did that. Behind.
Could we look at his chart?
Yeah.
Should we?
Yeah, the time for compromise is now past. So that's Neptune, Saturn, Aries coming, right? Right. And the South is determined to maintain her position and make all who oppose her smell Southern powder and feel Southern steel.
Which was probably not produced in America to make the gun.
Oh, probably not, right?
Yeah.
So if we think about that, that's pretty kind of crazy. I wanted to see really quick though, because I wanted to see if there was any of the governors. So Jefferson Davis, he argued the Confederacy creation reflects the American principle that governments rest on the consent of the governed and that the states may alter or abolish a government they judge destructive, even though that's technically not true. That's his own version. Which actually, this is what leads really well to the writ of habeas corpus being taken away, because it is an insurrection. He insists it's not properly a revolution and claims they sought peace, but says if peace is denied, they will maintain their position by the final arbitrament of the sword.
Arbitrament.
Yeah, and then Waltz uses Civil War memory to urge holding the Union democracy line. Davis uses the Revolutionary Civil War era logic to justify breaking the Union and preparing to defend that break by force if necessary. Same, we are in a decisive moment, architecture, opposite end goal.
Except that when Waltz says it's to defend the democracy of the Union, was that it?
Yeah. Well, no, this is what AI is trying to say.
Yeah.
It's mixing. I had to do a comparison of like go through every quote of all the governors and of Jefferson Davis and this whole narrative of what Tim Waltz is framing it as.
Yeah.
Find the relationship.
Yeah. And it is how you can connect that. But his claim is so interesting, like we've said, but to say it's about it's defending democracy and the Union, the decision to allow immigrants to come over the border that are now, right, it was not legal, but also it wasn't democratically decided upon. It's just been decided upon by some people who have decided their views are the right views, and that's okay. It's kind of like Revelation, thinking, well, Revelation says this should happen or whatever. It's not, obviously they aren't using the Bible to justify it, but it is this idea of human rights that, everybody should see this in the same way.
Yeah, because this is what happens with Neptune at the end of Pisces coming into Aries. Was in North Carolina, the governor says it refuses troops. You cannot get no troops from North Carolina, right, to Lincoln for the Great Call. But then also there's this, it's all about like, whether you call them National Guard or ICE, they're both troop level numbers to go after because now it's being set up as the National Guard here are to go after ICE, which are federal agents, which technically would be like federal troops. But that was what's weird is the call that Lincoln made of the 75,000, right? Is the same that like Trump came into power and what did he do? Of course, they dismantled so many things, right? At the beginning of the administration, but then they made huge calls for ICE agents, right? So they allotted the money for ICE as the executive branch because they're in control of that. So ICE is now a huge department with a ton of new people.
It's just
right. It's the same thing that Abraham Lincoln did when he got in is like, hey, we need more troops and we need more people. And then the southern states go, we're not going to give troops and then we're going to defend, right? So refuses to furnish the men for the purpose of coercion. So this is what you've been hearing on the left. Like, we will not join, or if you're ICE, I can't, all the videos, I can't believe you joined ICE. Like, how do you live with yourself? And then Arkansas, Henry Rector refuses troops to subjugate the southern states, calling the demand an insult and asserting Arkansans and free men, not slaves. We saw this in California with Newsom. Right, like, what do you mean? Trump's calling the National Guard? I didn't, without telling me, and he's not allowed to, and he's overstepping that. And then Trump brought the Marines in, right? So it's the whole hold the line. So, right, Walt's hold the line is consciously union coded. Minnesota Civil War service is proof his loyalty to the nation, but the 1861 Southern governor posture was state sovereignty coded. Refuse the federal call, cast the federal government as the aggressor, and treat the refusal as a legitimating step towards a separation war. That's what gets weird. It's so funny. Cleanest way to say it on stream. I don't have a clean way of saying shit. Right? But that's where, just give me the governors of southern states quotes of rallying locals for Confederate Army or the war, etc. So now we'll go to the presentation that we had.
Okay.
Because I think this is where, I know we have the newspaper articles, but I think this is what we'll, So here we are. Lincoln's state of exception. How emergency power becomes a constitutional precedent. This is definitely going to be what's going to happen based off the astrology. And I'll show that astrology at the end of us going through this. But this is, I think, one of the bigger parts of the Civil War, because this is where it's the first time that there are rights taken away from Americans since the Constitution was ratified at the convention in 1787. And then, of course, by the time that finally Washington is president, right, there was no pulling back the rights of an American, right? So the court pattern is to suspend the rules to save the rules, right? The Constitution allows the suspending of habeas corpus in rebellion or invasion. It doesn't clearly specify who pulls that lever. So there is no saying it's part of the executive or the legislative or even the judicial, right? It's not saying that the Supreme Court does that, right? Lincoln acts first, then defends it as a necessity. So in a real emergency, practice can outrun the paper Constitution. The fault line, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. So this is what they used in many ways during COVID with emergency powers in states to lock people down, to tell people you can't leave your house or whatever.
Right.
But they didn't actually pull that full string. They said it, but they didn't really have enforcement on it.
And they hadn't suspended habeas corpus. So
right.
If you broke that.
So it's almost like, was this all in training for what's about to happen?
I don't know. You have to go all the way back to when ICE was even established in
that's
2003 or whenever.
right. Yeah, it's more like. I mean, I'm looking at whether it's ICE or what, you know, we had to remember that back then it was just soldiers.
Security.
There wasn't FBI, there wasn't any.
But it's this idea of, for Homeland Security, you can have this extra military force that's going to go in and take care of things that are breaking federal laws. But then also, right, I mean, so ICE is separate from habeas corpus, right? From the writ of habeas corpus, because what they're saying now is that Trump might go or is planning to go one step further. And if you are colluding to evade the law or whatever it is, you can be arrested indefinitely and not charged with anything. And you're just, you know.
Yeah, it's really pulling away your bill of rights.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the judicial system, meaning that you're not going to go to your local judge or even a federal judge. You're going to go through the military tribunal system, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's a huge difference. So you lose your First Amendment rights.
But it's the idea that immigrants can be held indefinitely without a writ of habeas corpus.
And that's actually what in the last 2 weeks Trump put in, is to just be able to detain. Once you're detained, you're detained. Even if we're waiting for you to go back, that you don't get any kind of, you're going to be locked down the whole way process. That was just 2 weeks ago. But Lincoln is the one who does it. So his move, of course, is I'll do it now. Congress can argue about it later. And then the objection, of course, in Congress was saying that only Congress can suspend it, but it's not defined that way, right? So it becomes a big question also about what is the reality and how it's so very Neptune Aries. How is this really defined? These gray areas turn into not being able to be gray anymore, and it has to be defined.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality test, the judiciary can't enforce an order against the army in wartime, right? So the crisis hits, then the executive expands the way, if you look at the loop, then Congress ratifies it, then the courts defer, and then there's a new baseline. So, and ironically, it's a Pentagon. So the Civil War sequence is that of every time this went into action, the writ of habeas corpus and martial law, right? So April 1861 is right after Neptune ingresses into Aries. But the big one is when Neptune during the summer is retrograded back into Pisces of August 61, right? There's a Missouri martial law that's done there. By September of 1862, the proclamation 94 is a big one. But March of 1863 is the Suspension Act. Then there's the proclamation of September of 1863. And then there's Kentucky martial law. And so starts narrow, more of a corridor, and then grows to a national. So it didn't just start. So if you think about when Trump took over DC, well, that's where it started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what Lincoln did, was start it in DC. So, this is going to go down, in my opinion. So it's kind of interesting because, the Civil War starts just right before April 27th of 1861. But Lincoln authorized General Winfield Scott to suspend habeas corpus along the rail route to D.C., and then John Merriman is detained at Fort McHenry. So this is where Confederates try to actually come into D.C. through the railways and try to do a fucking hit on D.C. and the Union, right? And the army, and then the lesson in wartime, the executive military can outrun the courts in practice. The first test is simple. Can a judge free you if the army says no? And when that happens, they cannot. Then General Fremont declares martial law across Missouri and orders confiscation and emancipation. Lincoln objects to the unilateral emancipation in a border state and removes Fremont. So he's not afraid of extraordinary power, Lincoln, and he focused on who controls what and who is in the political scope. Then the Proclamation 94, which is the big expansion. The martial law is applied to broad categories of people within the United States, not just a battlefield zone. Habeas corpus is suspended for persons held by military authority or military commissions. Civilians, dissent, and the draft become part of the war powers apparatus. So we have to remember that part of it too is civilians here. You're not going to be able to just say what you want. So there's actually real, like the newspapers and stuff like that. Like censorship becomes part of it because you don't want to be like maybe giving away things that the union's doing to protect itself, right? Mm-hmm. Plus, there's soldiers that could be spies that are for the Confederates. It gets really kind of creepy. But the big one there is there's the draft, right? And then it's also interesting because then you have the Union using freed slaves to also become part of that draft, which I think is really wild if you think about it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like maybe this whole thing might get really crazy where it's like, well, why is Trump detaining everyone that in ICE? Like, and some people who maybe he said he was only going to go after the bad guys, but why sometimes does he take the cook out of this place or something? Maybe they're doing, you'd be a great soldier. Mm-hmm. Let's keep him. Right? Keep him. And then boom, when this all starts to happen in 26 and to 27, it's like, you're part of the draft. You can be an American citizen. Like that's how we, as a country, still work as the military, right?
But now you're going to have states that could also say, we're giving you citizenship in our state if you serve.
Correct. That's true. Although it was weird because the Confederate Army didn't do that for the slaves. They said, you have to go fight and we're not giving you back free. We're not giving you freedom if we win. You're going to still be a slave. Right?
Yeah, that's odd.
Right? So it's almost kind of like, well, you could join the fight because our Southern hospitality and our Southern ways of God are better than the North and the devil of Abraham Lincoln and the abolitionists.
Yeah, maybe the idea is just you're fighting for these ideals. Aren't you lucky?
Yeah, and then, of course, in Congress retroactively blesses it finally. So it's kind of weird. Of course, it takes a couple years, almost 2 years to be exact, that Habeas Corpus Suspension Act authorizes the presidential suspension during the rebellion. And its function as indemnity, legalization of earlier executive actions. It also requires detainee lists to be provided to federal courts, unevenly implemented. Mm-hmm. Act first, then move the legal line to where you already stepped. And then this is where the war is coming to an end. May 1863 is pretty bad for the Confederates, every part of it after. But the anti-war leader of Van Lanningham is arrested in a pre-dawn raid after a speech, right? So First Amendment, right? Tried by military commission under General Burnside's order, convicted for treasonable sentiments. Lincoln commutes the sentence to banishment, controlling the politics. And the maximum scope and then a slow unwind is really the end of 1863 and 1864, when habeas, it's nationwide for those held by military authority, and then the martial law imposed in Kentucky. And then by the end of 1865 and after Lincoln's death and so forth, Johnson begins lifting martial law and revoking suspension. So they kept that lid on after the war ended.
Yeah. I mean, because there were still efforts to continue it, right? You know?
Right. So it's kind of like COVID, right? Like COVID never existed, in my opinion, but you know, whatever. It took a long time for them to get rid of the emergency acts when people weren't following them. But it's not till August 20th of 1866, the proclamation declares insurrection ended nationwide. 2 years after the war is over, 2 years after Lincoln's death, almost 2 years, 1865 he's shot, but that's what's kind of crazy to me, right? And then The Supreme Court, civilians cannot be tried by military tribunal if civilian courts are open. So it's interesting because now they're going to make sure that they're closed. That's actually one of my big predictions that I said for this year, if you remember.
Yeah.
That good, there won't be judges for a while. Transition, major parts of wartime practice would not be acceptable as normal governance. The legal correction arrives after the crisis when it's safe to say too far. Lincoln's dilemma becomes the standing argument of necessity in later crisis, and the same rhythm shows up again: executive initiation, legislative support, judicial delay. And why does that matter astrologically? Because everything is coming into Aries, right? Saturn, Neptune, and that's opposite of the courts. But then you have Uranus and Gemini, which will be trine Libra, and Pluto and Aquarius that's trine Libra. So it could be a little bit of based upon like the state, very individualized, very Uranian and very Aquarian. But you know, it's kind of weird because it's not going to look the same as it did then. Oh wait, what happened to that? Capricorn overload, governments and institutions in heavy motion mode. We saw that. Jupiter and Cancer in opposition. Tribe, home, nationwide pulls against the system, right? So it's like now you're seeing this like, we need to protect our home. Why didn't they do that during COVID? Because nothing was in Cancer. Right? Yeah, there was a solar eclipse and that was on the solstice, if you don't remember, of 2020. But that was North Node and Gemini. But it's kind of interesting that like nobody was fighting about their home except for us anti-COVID people, which was the minority.
Right.
Right now, it's kind of the minority again, just kind of, which is kind of interesting. But it's like, it's about people who are like illegal. So it's kind of weird. Like ICE, if you're an American citizen, then you shouldn't be worried about ICE.
I know that's
like, you know, COVID's different though, because it doesn't matter if you're illegal or you're a citizen. They tried to come after you, even though it was a scare tactic.
right. And the idea of equating this with Gettysburg, or even the worry about suspending habeas corpus if it is for immigrants who are here illegally, that's being presented as something that we should be fearful of and worry about.
Very much so.
But I mean, the issue is that we can go back to the Homeland Security Act, or what is it, the Patriot Act?
Patriot Act.
And that is really what I remember that you've talked about that and identifying that as the shift where, you know, you said something was going to happen in this most recent astrology that would be similar to that, where we'll never go back to the way it used to be. Like the Patriot Act was, you can no longer go, like we were actually watching Home Alone over Christmas time. And I said, oh, you guys don't remember that to my kids, you know, like, because it's like, oh, you can't just go up and say, oh, I need to take it. Yeah. But anyway, that was the era of, now we have this idea of, oh, we can suspend habeas corpus if we think you could be a terrorist. I mean, it's like this whole thing is just a slippery slope of, it's in the background now of, it's like we need a civil war now so we can suspend habeas corpus.
What it exists. That it defines things by an action that no gray can be around. No gray is allowed. Because you have to think of like when you gray rock somebody, then then you don't know what do you feel? What do you think? What are you doing? I don't know what you're doing here. You're just gray rocking me.
And that's the response we should be having to all of this, by the way. Shouldn't we be rocking and not being?
I think it's it's going to become impossible when Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, because
It's so bad already, David.
the first sign is Aries, and it's ruled by Mars, and that's what war is. And then you and I had a discussion earlier today. It's like, well, the biggest events in the world and how the world changes is the direction of a big war. It's always a war that defines the new rules, the new society, the new borders, the new leaders, the new currencies, like Aries defines it all. So war always defines it all. And that's what I think is hard about the spiritual community, right? Is like, nobody wants war, but unfortunately, if you follow astrology, that's actually what the spiritual sign is of change. That actually it's not. So even the protest, the 11th house or Aquarius, the goal is war. They try to say peace, but the ones that just say peace at the end of the day don't define something.
So there will be no more peace now in Neptune in Aries.
No way. And with Neptune out of Pisces, so if you think about this Saturn, Neptune, late Pisces, law and truth get foggy. Narratives become weapons, but nobody's using the weapon. Once you get the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, that fogginess becomes not foggy, and the weapon becomes used and defined and asserted upon. And then you have, of course, Pluto in Aquarius, which is the power migrates into the networks, the code, and the infrastructure. So this is where I think this is interesting about AI, and then looking at you were talking about the technology of 1860 and 1861. Mm-hmm. So we had the telegraph, but we also had a solar flare in 1859 that took down the telegraph, right? But it's interesting that, right? So it's the beginning of communication from long distances. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty crazy because they can find out pretty quick how many men were lost at Gettysburg. Right. How many men were lost in this battle? How many, right? Pretty fast.
Not to mention photography, which we talked about before. So people can actually see the deaths too. Right.
And so they did, and it was about arrests, forts, like Fort Sumter, right? Or when the Union would take over different forts in order to take position of parts of the Mississippi, or, because really they went for the waterways to block the Confederates from using the waterways to come into the Union. Also, there was, the United, or back then, England involved, right? And trying to do trade with the Southerners for cotton that Abraham Lincoln stopped. So if you think about Trump with the whole tariff war, there's more going on about that, and you want to see which states get affected the most, right? Then you have now platform enforcement. So look at X right now. It's under the United Kingdom is about to ban X, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where they're arresting 12,000 people online for saying something online. Financial rails, right? So that there's a combination of financial rails too that happened then, because there was the beginning of the greenbacks and paper money that both the Confederates and the Union started printing, mm-hmm. of debt-backed currency.
Right.
So there is something about this that also is about new currencies. And then data surveillance. The surveillance was happening during the Civil War as well, during habeas corpus removal, because that's where they were knowing there would be a speech by somebody and show up there and then raid them during their speech, right?
Right.
And then the infrastructure control is the same thing that happened during Civil War when it came to where does the cotton go? You brought up the steel, the copper that was up north, and then of course the infrastructure of the Union being there is no slavery, and then the Emancipation Proclamation, and a change of how those control mechanisms work where you can't use slaves, which was a good thing. But like, you know what I mean? Like the infrastructure is going to have a massive, you know, control factor on what can be used and what can't be used. And a lot of it is like what's kind of taken away, like that is bad. Like if you think about it, like, because that's the positive side of Aries. So it's like slavery is bad. Let's pull that away. Look at RFK. All these vaccines, they're all bad. Let's bring it down to 11 from 72. So what you're seeing right now is this like pullback of things, and people are freaking out. And that's part of the infrastructure control, right? Because if you're in a left-wing state, people are freaking out over it. Even though if you relate it to other parts of the world, it's normal. It's like we've gone too far. So it's kind of weird because
people are primed to see the whole, this is overreach, this is tyranny. It's that same discourse underneath everybody's fear. Like that's what they think.
So yeah, I mean, I think the core is that a president can suspend core liberties and survive if the crisis feels existential. So it's going to have to feel existential. And with Neptune and Saturn and Uranus moving into Gemini, and with all these big eclipses, a Mercury retrograde in Pisces coming and everything, with the North Node and an Aquarius eclipse and another South Node solar total eclipse in Leo this year. Oh, it's going to be existential. Emergency powers expand the narrow corridor to a broad net to a prolonged duration. Congress often legalizes what the executive already did. Courts tend to be quiet during war and corrective after the fact. Free speech is the first boundary that's tested. Public safety and temporary is the standard wrapper for extraordinary measures. And astrologically, we're back into the institutions versus people pressure cycle, Capricorn, Cancer, Pisces, Aquarius. So watch for the word temporary, which powers normalize. That's the baseline shift. And that's what's going to be the fog of Neptune and Saturn, right? This is just temporary definition. We're just defining it as this right now. So that makes somebody feel calm. Like, oh, well, I guess it won't be forever. And that's the hard part about Neptune and its illusion and its like very tranquilizing capabilities, because with Saturn there's control, right? So it's, no, this is temporary. Really, no, it's not, right? So so Saturn gets to wear a cloak with Neptune. I think people forget that. Yeah. And the last Saturn Neptune, of course, was in June of 1989. And that's kind of important because that's when the first Bush is president. And so his cloaking as an ex-CIA director was to go into Iraq by 91 and do Desert Storm, right? And that he wouldn't raise taxes when he's the Republican that did raise taxes. That's why he lost to Clinton in 92. Mm-hmm. So a lot of cloaking with Saturn, Neptune, and Capricorn, right? But that was more about like a big long-term plan, where I think this is like, yeah, there's plans always with Saturn, but it's very Aries. It's very much more war, very strategic, and a very, and it's got its fall position there with Saturn. So there is this kind of like, yeah, just do this to get to the next thing, right? It's not about trying to make because the move was, oh, my son will be president one day and then he'll go in there in 2003 and we'll be in there with Obama and we're going to stay there for a long time. By the time you get to Saturn, Neptune opposition, that's what happens, right? So it's kind of like, because when Saturn opposed Neptune, and when it was Saturn like Leo 2006 and Neptune in Aquarius, right? That's where it's like, wow, we're really in fucking Iraq hardcore. Like it was all about Iraq, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's really kind of how the astrology like works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes me wonder too, because there was an aspect of China being involved when we think about COVID, right? So is that going to come back where we can position ourselves to do something there as well? I mean, because also in the 1850s in China, that's a huge time too, of the time of the Opium Wars. I mean, 1850s and then 60s. I always go back to the 50s because so many things started happening then. And then when they get to the 1860s, we've looked at that too, where we've looked at that in other episodes, but I mean, it helps to have a global perspective. Oh, yeah. So that I think that things with China would obviously be coming back, right? Astrologically, even.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the China situation, especially if you use the astrology of it's an Aquarius ascendant, it's got Pluto's crossing the ascendant over it. You see the moves that China's made in every different area, especially now that Venezuela is now under American control at the moment. Mm-hmm. That they're going to be making moves, of course, to hurt us, which would be Taiwan. Which, of course, echoes when China was on the opposite side of the fence during the World War II with Japan. And Japan took over the whole same areas of which China has taken over now.
Right.
I think the wild card is Russia again. That, I think that whole situation of Ukraine, it looks like Ukraine and Russia will have to shake hands and then be on the same team as the West.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because this whole BRICS thing was based upon Venezuela and the oil deals that were being done there and all that stuff, right? And there was all the officials, a bunch of like state diplomats from China and Iran and all that met with Maduro the day of his extraction, the day of, but right before that night of his extraction. We also have to kind of bring up that the energy weapon that was used.
That's right. I wanted to say
which I've been telling people for years this was going to show up, right? I've said it like so many times because I was in the Navy and I remember in 2006, ironically enough, when I saw the tank that has the freaking huge satellites that frequency and people, the same thing that was described by all the Venezuelan troops just lately, that they all got like knocked out and nosebleeds and they're just like on the ground, like what happened? That's what we've had forever. We just actually finally used it on a whole entire city population.
And that was sound waves, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. That was one of your predictions that would get loud. Oh, but maybe it's not just loud, it's just sound becomes destructive.
It does though. Yeah. When you hit the speed of sound, it becomes a sonic boom. Mm-hmm. Right. And I've been on a ship under an F-18 doing a sonic boom. And it is not something, unless you have your cranial on, that's what it's called. You're not hearing from, when you're underneath it and it's off the deck like 500 feet, it hits. And they know when to hit that exact mile per hour right after the ship or before the ship, not over the ship. But it ripples the water, it ripples the whole entire air, right? Like you see, it's like opening a portal.
Yikes.
So the fact that they are using energy weapons now.
I don't know if energy weapons includes also the quantum sonar weapons. I don't remember if I talked about this last time because I went down this whole rabbit hole of looking at quantum engineering and the types of weapons that are being developed in that world. And I, because there was this not altercation, but this standoff between China and Japan recently, where China was doing some sort of an exercise, like a military test scenario with something, and Japan deliberately flew into the airspace where they were doing it, and they had words over that Japan had deliberately flown into the airspace, and China was upset. But I think that what they were testing was something to do with these quantum weapons, right? And it's not just it's like these are involving lasers and things. I don't remember. I think I was going on my quest also to see where would they be needing the rare earth minerals that are located in that region of Venezuela or next to Venezuela and Guyana that we looked at before.
I mean, if you think where that is, it's if you just see Peru to the side, like that's a huge spiritual area, and it deals spiritually with like the heart chakra, or even like that ego kind of heart chakra, not like the ego people think, but the identification chakra. And if you just think about all of the way that you see the energy weapon on it, and you see all the bombs coming in and all the helicopters coming in, it's like the central collective conscious at the moment, like people are too lost in the external that they forgot about their deeper insides. And so there's an attack on your life spiritually right now if you're not paying attention to your own heart needs, and you're just actually loving too, right? That the energy that represents that in that area, because you got Peru right next door, you've got Machu Picchu, you've got that new, of course, valley that they just found a whole new ancient civilization in 2024 that had never been found, and all the gold that's there, and all the, there's oil and all that stuff, but there's beautiful and very deep and rich spiritual. I mean, that's where the last time Neptune was in Aries, right? That's where the Spanish ended up when they were in Peru. We just did that episode, I don't know, a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
That now America's there. And that was something that we said then. Is America going to really end up here and be like the Spanish?
Maybe. I don't know.
Because now then you have to remember that there's also, that's the longer out period of Neptune and Aries, is we're in the Spanish Inquisitions and the Spanish conquests of the people of the Incas, right? And then, of course, taking out the Aztecs. So if you think about it, the fact that you've now just seen a big major country come in and take over a country in South America, and then now it's Mexico that we're going to go into next, right? And the Mexican government, right? So my prediction, right? I said that the big, I don't want to, people can purchase it. Go to highvibe.tv.
But go back and watch that one episode where, I don't remember when it was, that we were talking about some of that. Right. But you really go into it and make more connections in your sun sign video. It's at the end. People need to go to the end of the predictions. But the sun signs were great too. It was a great video.
It's crazy that already those predictions are going true.
It is. Now,
like Mexico will be where it rocks everyone. Because that's where, if you really think about where the Spanish focus so much energy on, there's something about Mexico that they really were able to convert people the most and become the biggest Spanish / Catholics out of nowhere, right? The people of Mexico at that time were they didn't know who Christ was, right? Like it's all Incan and Aztec stuff, but it's a little bit more nuanced up there. But obviously, I think there's a lot more secret stuff in Mexico. A lot of the finds of a lot of old alien stuff right now is in Mexico.
Yeah.
So, I think that, why were the Spanish there? Okay. Why is America going to be there? It reminds me of the Nazis, because we're in the World War II energy coming up really fast here. And the weapons that were created. So like some were the first jet fighter, right? The guided V1 and V2 missiles that von Braun, radio guided bombs, the Fritz X, the advanced rocketry, alongside far-fetched concepts like colossal tanks, the Panzer VIII Moss, the space-based sun guns. They were going to use the sun as a huge weapon. Flying saucers, which ironically enough, we start playing with those in 1947. Right? They look like the Nazi flying saucer. And then the stealth aircraft. So there's a lot more, of course. That's just some of them. But the idea, chemical agents developed as nerve agents like Taban and sarin, though not widely deployed as weapons. I mean, if you just do these, you could do 5 secret weapons that the Nazis had. I mean, like, that's what it looks like today. A drone looks like today, right? the Goliath, like, so like they're like these bigger tanks, even though that's a kind of like a model of it, but like, look at that.
It's like a stealth fighter.
Correct, but even weirder, it looks like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't have the swastika on there, right? You would just be like, oh, that looks like, is that from Anakin Skywalker? Like, is that from Star Wars? Which episode?
Exactly.
Right.
Pod racer.
But yeah, I mean, and it's at the Smithsonian now, but that was a prototype. Right. And then that's where, and this is the code for infrared device. Now, what's crazy is infrared is what we use on the James Webb Telescope. Right. So we're in a time that's adding that on top of all that. Right. So what was the Confederates' weapon that nobody else has ever had before? The
submarine.
Yeah. The submarine. Right. So the right. And they used it. Right. So the Confederate submarine, the H.L. Huntley, a revolutionary hand-cranked vessel that became the first submarine in history to sink an enemy warship in 1864, but it tragically sank with its crew shortly after. But the fact that existed and happened with Neptune and Aries, Uranus and Gemini, so the inventor aspect is going to be off the wall. But with Pluto and trine to Aquarius, it's going to be technological and frequency-based. Satellites, so like this just came out, that Starlink satellites are going to be lowered.
Huh.
Right. So Starlink satellites are large, efficient rays. So they're about to be lowered, like, powered, lowered, like lowered, low Earth orbit. So they're going to bring them down. Was just in the news recently. So satellites lift up. Okay. Yeah. So they're reportedly make Starlink accessible during Iran protests. Wow. This is all 4 days ago. Will be brought closer to Earth in 2026. 4,400 of them.
But why? Oh, here's why. What does it say?
Right. So these things already are crazy, right? Up there. And there's a shit ton of them. But the decision is linked to the approach of the solar minimum period expected around 2030, and the sun follows the activity, so that they'll be able to bring it down. But the reduction in deorbiting time goes from over 4 years to a few months, thereby improving the safety of all circumstantial space. It becomes increasingly crowded with Earth's low orbited, with Starlink representing about 2/3 of the operational satellites. And then the Chinese internet constellations plan to launch thousands of additional craft. So there's going to be so many layers of satellite technology, and they're like moving them all. And then there's a solar minimum, and then we're going to Mars. And all that stuff's directed down here, right? So who's not going to say that's where they turn it on? Especially then that's where, I would say that the XAI just right, like military, right? Like this is where it was just, honestly, it's kind of creepy because everything you're watching is the history repeating itself. Like, Pentagon embraces Musk's Grok AI chatbot as it draws global outcry. So, Terminator 2 is happening full blown. And it also is an AI that the model that Grok made is not woke and made for the military, meaning it's meant for killing and it doesn't care about your gender, your race. It's for war, right? So it's a program model that is literally for killing.
Wonderful.
Very Neptune Aries and new technologies, right? That's where, there we go. Supporting the Department of War's mission with AI, right? So it's and so when you try to go to the website, I just did this with Rion the other day. Watch this. You have reached this page because you're not allowed, because I don't have clearance. But what is that in the middle? The Pentagon?
Yeah, it looks like the Pentagon. And
then
what is that, the office? where
That's
it's
an
located?
AI in the middle with a star, right? And then there's like this new outer left and right brain on top of the Pentagon.
Yeah, but an artificial brain, right?
Yes, that would be more of an artificial. So it's Gen AI with the star. If you see that, and it's not a normal A with a cross in between it. So if you try to go on your browser, somehow, I don't know, if I were to block my IP or go on one of my PCs that I can go on the dark web and try and go on it, I don't know if it'll let me down in, but this is turning on this week, or I think they're doing it on the new moon, because they haven't given us the date. They just said, here in the middle of January, we're about to do it. So everything's being set up for the infrastructure. That's correct. And that, I think you were saying, and I don't know if you have any slides to show, but that Abraham Lincoln, right, was just as much as the South was preparing for the war when Abraham Lincoln became elected, right, that Abraham Lincoln himself was preparing for the war too, right? So it's kind of like these are all preparations for a bigger thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of how to connect all of the things you're talking about with the weapons to the Civil War. But I mean,
oh, well, like the communications, right? So this is the communication element.
Yeah.
So the problem with Robert E. Lee, and ironically with Gettysburg, is the communication and going off this one guy who thinks he's the best general, and he's got an ego up to here, right? Because everybody loves him, even people in the Union like him, right?
Right.
But decides to go into Gettysburg and throw everything he's got at it, where he has the greatest losses. And then he becomes a horrible general because his ego is so hurt by it that the rest of the war, he's just not even worth being a general. So if you think about the communication, there's no communication for him to tell Jefferson Davis, like, how well are we doing on troops? How well are all these other generals that are the Union guys affecting our Mississippi River line? How are they handling, how's General Sherman doing over there? Is he coming in yet? Right? Into Georgia and going through all of the state eventually to pound every freaking thing out. There was no communication, right? Where the Union was using the communication and the telegraph and making sure, even though it kind of seemed slower, at least they got their information right and they were more strategic. So I think, Tim Waltz tries to go up against Gen AI.mil with Starlink and everything hooked up in an AI system with drones and swarm drones and the whole U.S. Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force. You're pretty much screwed.
Unless you can make an alliance with another nation somewhere in the world.
That's great discussion, because that's what looked like almost happened actually at the very beginning of the war with Britain, with the South, and the Union stopped that and stopped the British ship, and then held that ship, right, and made the British government get down on its knees in order to finally let it go.
Right. So that's why we need to make sure we have all of our alliances in the rest of the world, all of our resources situated so that we know where the oil is going, that it's not going to the wrong people. I mean, there's so many tactical moves right now, just preparing for this conflict or whatever however things will be taken up to the next level. But to me, it seems like it's, actually one thing I was looking at is, I just was thinking, to me, what we need to think about is, if you look at the end of the Civil War, who had the most financial power?
Right.
To me, that's always what I think. That's going to tell you where we're going. And it's interesting that one of the people, or it says the biggest winners were northern bondholders, banks, and the railroad industrial finance network centered in New York, with a secondary concentration in southern land and credit systems. The strongest continuity was the ascendance of bond holding and federally connected banking capital. So they financed the war through federal debt, under the National Banking Act's national banknote issue, like you were saying. But from 1865 through the 1870s, the most consequential private financial power set with financiers and syndicates able to mobilize domestic and European capital for railroads and then to reorganize failing lines and securities. This is the world that produces the stereotypical railroad finance titans. J.P. Morgan is the clean example because its core leverage was exactly this: underwriting, reorganizing, and consolidating large rail systems and their securities, which effectively meant influence over a major share of the national capital market as it formed. So, I mean, the thing is that we think railroads, we just think, okay, transportation, but it, like I said, it facilitates communication. It allows also telegraph lines were constructed along the railroads. It facilitated all the growth so that we could go to other parts of the country, gaining the minerals that we needed for other types of financial expansion. And so clearly we are issuing like a new world, which will be AI powered. And I mean, beyond just the military, right? But it's AI in every aspect, because this is something else I was thinking about this week was, because I always idealistically think, we need to harness AI to connect more. We need to overcome divisions because really AI could tell you, like, who are the people in your neighborhood or in your world who are thinking like you, who want to do similar things, have similar ideas for creating projects, right? So that you don't need to have the financial capital of a bank, right? But guardrails are put in place on AI, so you can't really easily do that. But the world as it's being imagined right now in everyday use of AI would be using things like your Ray-Ban sunglasses. Like, you now will be able to wear or have implanted within you at some point this AI that's going to be telling you what to think about the whole world, or it could tell you what to think. And I'm sure there's people who want to have that much control, but it can also bridge cultural differences or just differences between people, where more than ever before you could explore the world, learn everything about it yourself, talk to people because it's translating, figure out what's the best way to communicate with this person to have a better interaction. Like, all those things are possible with AI as well. And I think, we think about the worst case scenarios or what happened as a result of this. But another thing that happened would be for example, your ancestors could go to Oregon and still eventually those people who are located there would be able to telegraph or call people back home, or people could come out and visit them on the railroads, right? So it facilitated a whole revolutionary way of interacting. And that's what eventually comes down the pike, I think.
What I think is interesting is why do you see like California, Oregon, Washington, it's like
Since 2020, it's because the most troops are in those states, especially the Navy in California. Mm-hmm. So why would, you could see why it's like, oh, we'll be able to do it. But on the East Coast, there's a lot. And then in Texas, there's a lot. And so it kind of balances itself out. But this is where the big move and power play was made by the Department of War, was moving the whole military to XAI's grok. Because let's say Newsom and Tim Waltz, Tim Waltz only has 1,000 active duty troops. All right. Half 1,000. 500? Right? There's no big military bases out there. So he's got 7,500 National Guard, which really is more like the idea of like, hey, calling up all people in my state, back like in the old days in Tennessee.
Voluntary fire department.
Voluntary, come be a Confederate soldier. Right? Like, but now that the AI is turning on, if Newsom tries to secede and go, well, I have San Diego, one of the biggest Navy ports. We have the F-18s of the whole West Coast Pacific Fleet are in California. Fallon, everything. All Washington has 57,000 soldiers, and there's big, huge bases up there, and there's ports up there, right, with huge ships and battleships and subs and all that. Same on the East Coast, but it's like a big lot. Now it's just like, no.
Right.
So that's why I think you're seeing people like Tim Waltz going crazy right now, because they're going to just try and get the people to go into throw their bodies out there like that woman that Renee Gooder just did.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting is there's been such a worry about we can't mobilize enough troops because Gen Z is not interested in joining the military, or, like that was a worry for a while. But people will join these militias of whatever that is.
Here's some quotes from governors. I finally got quotes from April 1861, Neptune coming in Aries. All armed volunteer regiment or companies hold themselves in readiness for immediate orders, right? All armed volunteer regiments.
In Virginia, huh?
And then Lincoln's call is called a plain violation of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Then North Carolina, Governor Ellis says united action in defense of the sovereignty of North Carolina becomes now the duty of all. That is very Tim Waltz right there. Then you can get no troops in North Carolina. We did that one. This one's interesting too. Governor Vance in 1864 calls on men to hurry with his blanket to Wilmington, Tennessee. Your requisition is illegal, unconstitutional, and revolutionary. Kentucky, slave state, initial neutral stance. Kentucky will furnish no troops for the wicked purpose of subduing our sister southern states. Then Kentucky does choose the South.
Mm-hmm. So we should be seeing, so April 1861, is that
That's
in
Neptune.
a few weeks?
That's Neptune. Well, we already went through that last year. Right? And that was the beginning of all this. Right?
Yeah.
The summer and what you saw in California and all that, right? And the test grounds. Because remember in 1861, when Neptune ingressed into Aries, Fort Sumter was not that big of it was a big deal, but it wasn't that big a deal. There weren't big battles right after. There wasn't a bunch of deaths. It waited until the next time Neptune came back in Aries, like we're about to do. And that's when everybody went, I guess the war's happening. Very Neptune, right? Go back into Pisces and everybody be like, no, there's no war, blah, 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 blah. But as we're, what's today? The 14th? 12 days away.
Well, let's see what happens.
And that's why you're seeing Greenland, Mexico, right? Iran. That's what the top story is right now. We're going into Iran too. So you would think, well, we're going outward, but that could be the disguise of the inward.
But that is like the land acquisition.
Exactly.
Again,
it's a great way to bring it up.
That
at the same time the Civil War is going on is the land acquisition.
In the early 19th century, where you can't see it up there, the red is the United States. Like we have this idea that we were always the sea to shining sea thing, But no, we have always acquired more territory. And if the astrology is similar, we've already been looking for ways to acquire more territory, right? And we're getting, I mean, like now we're investigating Greenland and we're getting resources from Venezuela. Like part of this that you can't see is that eventually then it also goes on to Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. And it's all these various ways that you can get.
Well, look at Virgin Islands and the whole Epstein crap, and look at how funny. What's the country we purchased it from? Denmark. And that's the country.
Is there any astrology similar to 1917 right now?
No, World War I was.
Yeah. Are we having any oppositions to that? What do we have against Denmark?
I think it's more like what's the I think it's more like what does Denmark have against the United States?
And also, at a certain point, it's not feasible for a country in Northern Europe to be trying to, administer a land that's far away. Like, at what point does that become a financial liability? Which I'm sure that's why in 1917, they're willing to sell territory,
Right.
But I mean, I guess we should expect expansion or some
takeovers of forts, right? So like in states in Florida, like in 1861, it was like the Florida militia seized a federal fort under the orders of the governor. Or if you want to become a big exhaustive bank, 50 to 100 plus, tell me which sites you want. That's to me. But like Alabama, right? Calling for 60 companies of volunteers. Like that's the Neptune Aries reoccurrence again, right? That comes and everybody's like, I guess this war is real.
Thank God the war is open and we will conquer or perish.
That's South Carolina. And that's where, of course, that's where the war really... South Carolina is the worst state ever fucking created. Like, you know what I mean? Like for the Civil War. That's where the ideas of coming together started. Mm-hmm. So, which ironically, it's also another state during the Revolutionary War that was a big state. That is the one, I think that was the final state that ratified the Declaration of Independence, the idea of it.
And wasn't that where Benjamin Franklin's son?
Yeah, and that's where they split, right?
And then loyalist,
and then that's where what was his name? The British general Cornwallis took over the South, right? He was in the South and took over South Carolina right away.
So, do you think South Carolina will be at the center of something? Yeah,
because if you look at like, I know this may sound crazy, but it's like you got to kind of go like South Carolina, like. The Department of Defense, like, and military, bases and I don't know, equipment. I don't know, like, right. So it's like South Carolina hosts significant Department of Defense presence with Joint Base Charleston, Shaw Air Force, Fort Jackson, and Marine Corps, Beaufort and Paris Island. Covering Air Force, Army, Marines, focusing on airlift training for F-16s, coastal air support with key equipment, including transport aircraft, F-16s, and munitions, right? So, ironically, there's a fort, right? I'm wondering what the DOD, though, like, stuff might be, because you have to remember, like, there's this whole like Department of Defense thing going on with data centers right now that's really massive right now. If you look in the news about this, like, this is kind of what's crazy. 23 hours ago, DOD announces future homes of data centers.
Yeah, to me, that seems to be where you would be wanting to feed land, is to build those data
Texas,
centers.
North Carolina, Texas, Utah. Mm-hmm. All red states.
Data center dynamics.
Let's look at that. The U.S. DoD details military bases available for AI data center build out. January 12th, 2026, just 2 days ago. Texas, North Carolina, El Paso, Texas, Utah. Federal land for private data centers. And this was from a July 2025 executive order from President Donald Trump, which built on a similar executive order from previous Joe Biden, which sought to open up federal land for data centers.
Environmental, whatever, that stuff's been streamlined.
Yeah.
So yeah. And each administration is invested in that.
And that's weird because it's like the DoD sites, proposals must be received no later than January 22nd. And we're seeing, of course, the sun come into Aquarius and the conjunction with Pluto on that date.
Proposals for what?
For
it to be
those
these locations?
Yeah, for those locations, like all the proposals of like to build it. Because then there's also been the, it's like a $1.5 trillion right, like our defense. I know what it's called. We do it every year, our defense budget, but it's called the gosh, how do I forget the name?
The Department of Defense?
No, we always do our oh gosh, I know what it's called.
Projected something. Projected.
No, it's hold on. I can't believe my mind is.
Are you talking about the State of the Union?
No. This is the the appropriations for defense, but there's a technical term for this bill always every year.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. I can't believe I forgot it in my head. I'm going to feel like an idiot right now. The NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, that's every year.
Okay.
That it gets renewed. So it's at 1.5 trillion this year, and it has energy weapons in it too.
Interesting.
Right. And so this one's a massive increase from 901 billion to 1.5 trillion. So we're talking about $600 billion more. This is what happened right before we went into World War II with Roosevelt.
Building the dream military.
Yeah. Right.
So when did we have that increase before World War II? It was
in 1940. Like, when did Roosevelt boost military spending? 1940. Uranus and Taurus going into Gemini. Right. Prompted by the fall of France, asking Congress for massive increases in Army Navy expansion, a goal of 50,000 planes annually, followed by a landmark Two Ocean Navy Act in July 1940, authorizing huge naval expansion, or data center for us, and the Lend-Lease Act of March 1940 to aid allies. And Roosevelt requested $2 billion, right? And then funding went in May from $24 million to $700 million. Now you gotta see that it's more if you're at 900 billion to 1.5 trillion. Holy cow!
So then in May 1940, we're looking at Uranus. Like,
watch, I'll show. Bring it up. Okay. So
because it's the fall of France. Now we might not literally have countries falling, but not in that way. That's what I keep thinking. It's got to be. I don't know. A full scale war, maybe. Do you think?
I mean, that's what's already happening in
to just. We're going
to. The fact that we're in Venezuela, we're in Ukraine, Iran, Africa,
right?
Like it's world war.
But the way it's being portrayed by some people is like we're the ones invading and stuff.
We are.
Yeah. No, we're not doing it to protect our interests. We're the ones like encroaching.
Correct. So it's interesting because you see in 1940, at the beginning of January, Uranus in Taurus, Saturn in Aries.
Oh, and Pluto in Leo. So
Right,
the
Pluto,
opposite.
Leo, right? In the opposite place of, right? So if you just now move this, so you were asking about May, right?
Yeah.
During that. So it's like, yeah, like by May, it's like there's Pluto back to 0 Leo. That's basically what last, like 2025 was about, right? Pluto went back to 0 to 1 and some change Leo. I mean, Aquarius, and then went direct. We were in Saturn Aries. We were in Uranus Gemini last year. And now that spending's being asked for. And now that spending's going to definitely be given. Like nobody can, did you see Congress, the Democrats do a whole, I can't believe we're in Venezuela and do this whole crazy thing? No. Right. So that was also Mars that was in Gemini. It had been with Uranus 1940, right? It had been in Taurus, and then Saturn had went into Taurus. But I think, what's kind of interesting is also Jupiter was in Aries going into Taurus. We just went through that over the last couple of years. Pluto is really, if you think about it, by the time that you get to 1941, and if you look at what was that, it was
the Lend-Lease Act.
Yeah, that's the Lend-Lease Act. But the request began in 1940 under the same planets and the same positions of Uranus, and now we're coming into where you're only increasing spending that much when you're preparing for something.
Yeah.
And it's never been that big.
Right.
We've never done $1 trillion plus, right? Now we're going to do 1.5. And that's what's kind of crazy in that thing, because you're not just trying to cover outside forces, but obviously Civil War stuff too.
Well, yeah. And we had part of that during World War II as well, with like Japanese internment camps and
right, setting
up centers for people that might be dissidents or that were suspected of it. So it's just
right. Which, if you kind of look at Nazi Germany, like it feels a little bit like that. But I mean, we were doing all that too. Just we made it seem nice because we didn't have Zycom B.
Well,
you know what I mean? And we weren't gassing people, but we were holding Japanese in California, ironically. But we were also doing weird stuff in America, like black bagging people that we thought that people don't know about. So this is going to be 10 times crazier though, because this is all of it merging at once.
Yeah. Yes, it's very interesting. And and I have to add one more crazy thing, because it's Neptune in Aries, and I keep hearing people talking about cults. Well, I don't know about...
That's more a Pluto Aquarius, but
yeah. Okay, so, but all I know is something I thought of after our last show was, whenever we talked about Guyana, was that the last one before this show? I don't remember. When we talked about Venezuela, right. That was a few shows ago, because it was well in advance when that actually happened, that you'd targeted that as something that could happen. But I kept thinking Guyana, close to Venezuela, because I know that there are different areas near Brazil that were colonized and called different like French Guiana or whatever. But Guyana is where Jim Jones built his People's Temple. Right, when he left here. And then I was like, well, is that, because I just looked that up, November 18th, 1978, is that the Chiron placement, or has Chiron moved into Taurus by this time?
77.
It's discovered in 77.
Yeah. So I just thought it was funny that it was that particular region where it happened.
That's weird.
Because you were talking about the spiritual aspect of it last time too. So
too.
it makes you wonder, why were they drawn to that particular area?
I mean, it was remote, number one. And, you know, after Vietnam, the country's in disarray in 77 and 78 too. The inflation's super high, right? Like everybody's unhappy. And one of the unhappiest times in American history is actually the late 70s. The hippie movement failed.
Yeah.
Right? There is no commerce that's happening well at all. People are poor and people are dressed like, looking like idiots and have shag carpet and wish they could change it.
And they have bad cars.
And that's where Reagan comes in 80 and blows out.
Gets rid of the shag carpet.
Right? And celebrates in Los Angeles as the prior governor of California. That's the kind of world shift stuff that we'll be moving into, opposed to where that's more like during COVID times, if that makes sense. Like, you know, like you would move somewhere. How many people moved to other countries during COVID and all that? That's the same kind of vibe as that. That you just, where's a remote place?
Yeah. But so many people talk about doing that. So I would say, I mean, but there's no astrological connection to this time, 1978.
I mean,
Do you think?
Yeah, if you follow Chiron and its buildup.
But then it was formed.
But then, of course,
in
it's also
1955.
the buildup getting ready for Saturn Pluto in 83, right? Saturn Jupiter, Saturn Pluto, right? Jupiter Saturn by 80. So that's what I'm saying. That's kind of like, you know, people in 2018 going to Costa Rica, Costa Rica, right? Like everybody's like, oh, 2018, all spiritual community, we're going to Costa Rica. Now everybody's like, don't go. It's like, not, get out.
But I did not.
Or Tulum, everybody's going to Tulum.
Well, he went to every spiritual place, like Redwood Valley, right? He went to this other place in South America.
Yeah, it's just like not that big a deal, though. It doesn't impact anything now.
It doesn't impact anything now. You know why? Because otherwise people would think, maybe I shouldn't follow lunatics with weird beliefs. Maybe I shouldn't want to go. Yes, they even have I'm totally interested in this anyway, but I was looking at pictures. Where is it? Sorry, I'll get to it.
Remember I made that AI video of me doing the astrology of people in Jonestown? And
yes.
You shouldn't be drinking the Kool-Aid. And I got all these astrology charts out. Like, you guys are, I don't know what to tell you, but you guys are
It wasn't Kool-Aid. I do remember Kool-Aid coming out and saying it's not Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Flavor-Aid. And I mean, I'm sorry if anybody's family was impacted by this because it's horrific, but yeah, I just was thinking, isn't it interesting? It's that same.
Kids on it. It's Kool-Aid like a big fucking jug. He's like, I'm Kool-Aid.
What is that he said though? He's like, hey, what did he say when he busted through?
I remember I didn't like Kool-Aid. It had a weird taste.
What did you drink? Tang?
No, I would rather have like the Minute Maid back in the day, the frozen fruit punch.
Oh yeah, my mom always made that.
Way better. Or my mom and my grandma would make lemonade with pink lemonade, like, you know, and natural. That was the best. And put it in like the serving cup with the fucking, you know, with the serving thing and have some ice there. And that was like the 80s, you know, like that was bomb.
And was the juice box.
Kool-Aid was so
eventually.
Eventually, the 90s was really the Capri Sun like thing.
Yeah.
I never was raised on juice boxes. I'm doing that now, but to my kids. But my generation, we didn't have a juice box.
No, we did. I had frozen.
It was frozen concentrate, 2-liter blue 2-liter things, and for orange juice in the morning, you did that.
Yes, I totally forgot about that.
You know, these kids today have no idea how nice it is.
Or guess what? We'd have to get water from the tap and drink it. The kitchen glass.
I remember telling somebody, I forgot when, maybe it was a year, I don't remember. I was like, When I went to the grocery store, I remember when they finally added to where you could buy like an individual drink. You know, like how now you go to grocery stores and they like sell individual drinks everywhere. Like it used to just be like, I remember the grocery stores, that was a big deal. Like in like the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was like, wow, I could buy just an individual can of Coke right here.
I don't remember that.
That was
happening.
not like a big thing.
I always remember the most exciting thing about going to my mom's work. She was a teacher, was the Coke machine in the teacher's lounge. Like you could buy a bottle of Coke out, or it would, and it was like, oh, you could still get a bottle of Coke. I thought it was the coolest thing.
The slush puppy machines. Quarter and then a little cup and then a slush puppy. Gosh, it's my favorite thing that ever existed. That was the best, slush puppies.
I don't think I ever had slush puppies.
Slush puppies.
I was deprived. I only had ices and.
Yeah, well, and if you ever saw an icy machine, you just did it because they were rare to find. Because, you know, we lived with 7-Eleven Slurpee.
Didn't you love Slurpees though?
I did, but an icy was always a better choice. That was like supreme.
We had that at the movies.
Yeah, that would be at a movie theaters. I mean, like, oh, okay, blue or red, which one? That's it.
No, but
they had an ice white one that came out. And that one was the best one, but that was like rare.
So these are happier memories, David.
Well,
Let's bring back that astrology.
Because you just couldn't have access to everything all the time anywhere you want.
Yeah. But you did say that's kind of what's coming back is we're not going to have all the choices and.
Right. And I think that's where it's going to get messy in America and the States and like where things going to be able to be imported. So I saw in the news today, Trump put a 25% tariff on chips. I just saw that right here. Trump enacts 25% tariff on chips with a caveat.
Still on flavor aid.
Right. So that just happened.
Tariff on chips.
Yeah.
Like
no. Like all like processors, GPUs, right? Advanced computer chips is what they're calling it.
Yeah,
that includes the NVIDIA H200 chip, and this is for AI, right? But it includes your Apple chip and everything. But maybe there is a clause against Apple because he's, or whoever's making the right deals.
Yeah, it's really all about becoming the leader in AI, right?
Yeah, and that's where, the CHIPS Act under Biden, I looked it up. It was right before the new year, our government said, you need to build this out now, instantly. And so it's on emergency order to build the second center in Arizona. And now Trump's saying this is to move and boost the technology manufacturing in America because China's about to take away Taiwan. That's what's happening. And that's going to be the beginning of World War III, is that'll be the event. Mm-hmm. I think the caveat event will be Mexico. So it'll be a back-to-back thing. America's going in to just get cartel, right? And then something happens, and that's right when China's now taking over Taiwan, and that affects every Western country. Because every computer, every phone, everything, Taiwan, they're the ones who know how to make the chips, and the nanometer so small, and we're trying to do that here in America right now. So Trump's doing this to force it in every way. And really, if you think about it, if you're a Biden person, you shouldn't be mad because this is what Biden wanted. So they're all in on it. They're all in on it. They all knew the whole time. And I think this is where countries have agreements before wars. You have till this date and we'll make, And they all are waiting for this great alignment this year, which I think is sad because so many astrologers put out, oh, Jupiter or Pluto trine Uranus is going to be amazing. It's well, it will be in a lot of areas, but there's going to be this huge war.
Yeah.
The only way for that technology to thrive more and be kind of asserted in is through war. So, especially the Civil War is very much I know it doesn't seem like the coolest technology, but it actually is what develops to become the telephone. It's what develops to inspire the light bulb, all of it. Because that communication idea and wiring it across America to get Morse code and to talk that way inspires the idea of how we wire our internet today, everything. And the railway systems as well, right?
And we're getting ready to break away from that old system, though.
Yeah, correct. I mean, they're already kind of off it.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're going to be relying on cables.
No, right.
Because if you think about all the satellites and the internet from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I know people are concerned, well, they're going to cut the cable, you know. America is the one that can cut the cable and say, fuck all you motherfuckers, right? We got satellites too, but we also just run the internet. So thanks. And then that puts everybody into begging worse than a woman who needs rent to go to a strip club to get a job really quick, right? The worst thing is going to be, I need internet. So whether they have to go through Elon Musk or America, they're going to be forced on their knees for that, you know? Or that's America's like last ditch effort, not an atom bomb.
But can they come up with an alternative though? Or
not to be as powerful to give everybody the bandwidth, right? Then there's no data centers that are holding. Like the vital data centers are here. There's data centers in Europe, sure. But Europe's not created anything that's mind-blowing, which is sad. So it's really Taiwan is the thing, because that's where everybody uses devices to use these things. That's World War III with Mexico. That'll be timed at the same time, because that'll be a threat to China, because that's where they've been funneling a lot of the drugs and the people and their own people through the border. So yeah, it's going to get weird. The way the Civil War was weird. I mean, it is a very weird story, because it was like an offer to keep slavery forever in the United States Constitution, to make an amendment to say states that were already slave states before we want to get rid of slavery will always stay a slave state. It was going to be an amendment in the Constitution. And all the southern states said, no, we would rather go to war. That doesn't make sense to me, but liberals usually don't. So, you know what I mean? Like, you know, they don't. And they're walking in their same old trap again. That's what's funny about astrology, is like, you're watching liberals fall into the same trap again.
But because at the same time, you've got this new thing that states are trying to apply for, to be able to get federal land for data centers, because they know it'll be good for their economy. So at the same time, you could be anti certain policies of the government, but you want the government to come in and create federal land for you so you can have a data center. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, on one hand, they're expanding the federal government, but on the other, trying to contest it publicly, which shows you it's kind of a show in the first place, to make people feel like, look, we stood up to them. We did. But now, we need these jobs.
If you were a super lefty, really, that's where you would, as a Democrat, be targeting these white lesbian women to go drive your cars into the people building the data centers, because of environmental, or because it's AI, or because it's going to be connected to the Department of Defense and control, or whatever, right? That would be the number one threat. Not go kill yourself for illegal immigrants, like what they did in the South. Go kill yourself for slaves that we're using.
But really, if it's about slavery, we would have already accepted.
Right, but it's the same thing.
Time.
Illegal immigration is slavery for illegal immigrants, because they're not allowed to have the same anything.
Well, it's like it's an in-between category. You're here, you can't
That's what a slave was.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't get away. You're here, but you don't have full protection yet.
Right.
And you've got all these people saying, we're protecting you.
And giving you a driver's license to it's the same way that a slave had papers.
Did they even get to have papers?
Well, they didn't get to, but like the ownership of that state. Right, and then they make laws, but it's crazy because like if you apply for a job in America, yeah, sure, of course that state is going to know, but it goes through. You need to put your Social Security in, and then it does a federal check. Because an employer is going to be a corporation, LLC, S Corp, or C Corp, and we all have to whether you're using whatever payroll tax or system or payroll system, then it goes through a federal check.
What I wonder is this, like right now, it seems like there's a lot of magical thinking. There's a lot of people believing things that they want to be true that legally don't really make much sense. And so when you're believing something that's not true, your mind can be hijacked. Like you aren't you don't know your own rights, right? So you're kind of like for rent, like whoever can get their message to you fastest and you start acting on that message.
And it's happening on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, you see it all over the place. And I feel like, I don't know why, I just felt like that was an important thing to say, that it's a time where you just really need to know your own rights. Maybe when Neptune goes into Aries, does that break some of the spell? Or when Saturn goes, like, will it
Neptune has the spell. If somebody's already a super crazy right-winger, or a left winger, they are going to go full tilt to wherever they're directed. Right? Because out of nowhere, what happens in the Civil War? Okay, I guess I'm a Confederate. I'm joining up. The other guys are, I am too. All right, let's go.
Right.
Right? Same thing in the Union. Like, I guess I'm going to join the Union, and I'm going to join our Union Army, and I'm going to defend America. Right? So it becomes very like, wang, wang. That's what's going to be where, unfortunately, though, this is where the Democrats lose. You're already seeing the split, right? You're seeing like the Mondami and the AOC with this progressive, which in my opinion is more like the Copperhead Democrats. Because they're actually talking about just what normal people want. They want food. It's about money. And if you think about the Southerners, they were all about money. The Southern Democrats were all about slavery, was about tariffs, control, money, cotton, trade. Right.
Yeah, it was more than
it was banking.
They probably wanted control over their own ports, right? They wanted.
Correct. So it's like what we're dealing with is like Copperhead Democrats were more like a Mondami right now or whatever. They might be super progressive, but they're really about the people. Right? Where the Copperhead Democrats were like, hey, I'm willing to go with, like, if you even see the Mondami and Trump interview,
yeah,
that's like Abraham Lincoln and the Copperhead Democrats. Because the Copperhead Democrats were against the secession. So I know that might sound crazy to people, but like the middle of the road Democrats and the left wing crazier ones, right? Those are the ones that are about the money and the Elizabeth Warrens. Because, it's funny. You'd think she'd be more with Bernie Sanders. They have but they're not together. Right? Because she sells out hard. Really, it's the biggest sellouts.
Yeah.
So, that's what's going to get weird is that. But yeah, this is where the Liberal Party, like I said, like it died and it would die in 2024. Back in 2020, I said it will be fully dead in 2024. And this is going to be where it does die. And it's going to be sad because so many people are going to feel this call to go do this, whether it's under immigration or whether it's some new thing that they bring up, right? But it's going to be super just like, don't fall for it.
because you got some years. Neptune and Aries is going to be more, you're not a man, or you're not a lefty, or you're not a righty unless you join.
Yeah.
Right? But if you just stood back in the South in the old days and didn't believe any of that shit and just tended to your fucking goats and your horse and just watched everybody and heard them dying, you'd just be like, okay. It got a little weird once, of course, you know, we really started rocking the war and just destroying the South.
And then
but
suddenly you're Scarlett O'Hara and you have to make your dress out of
Correct.
drapes.
yeah,
You can't get access to
and
Good.
the thing the slaves say to help have the man she loved wife's baby,
Right.
because she couldn't handle it.
Right.
She runs into town and everybody's dead, and there's one doctor left and just nurses, and he's got blood in his hand, and he's like, that's it, it's a baby, I'm not leaving here.
Right.
And it becomes hysterical, though. That's the other Neptune.
Yeah.
Neptune in Pisces is the woke cry, the ah. But Neptune in Aries is hysterical, running like, oh my God, what do I do?
And there's no resources or no one to help.
There's
the
blood.
The other thing
Blood.
is that there's nothing to Google. I mean, like, we could be in situations where we are disconnected from the networks, right? Except
Yes,
the
like-
satellites are going to save us, but
I've seen, like, since the 60s to now, the color shades from, like, you know, I forgot, Vista paint or whatever, like, of homes, right? So like the 60s, 70s, there's all these colors, and then it starts by the 80s turning into more neutrals. And it's gotten just to where it's been neutral since the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, super neutral. And now we're at where it's like, it's not white, but it ain't color, but it's the most weird off-white, barely neutrally color. And that's what happens with Neptune and this kind of like diluting everything down. When Neptune goes into Aries, it is bold, it is red, it is Mars. That's why it was the biggest bloodshed. That blood was everywhere in the Civil War, and it's the bloodiest war that ever was.
yeah.
And so we're going to be seeing
Sounds very
red
cool, too.
everywhere, red skies, red volcanoes, red this, red. China's red.
Didn't you say something about volcanoes in your?
Yeah, I don't want to give everything
I'm not
away.
going to
Yeah,
say
but like,
anything either. But I did go do some research on that too.
yeah, that's where it's going to get like blood red, right? Then I feel too, it's going to be colors become a thing, right? Like you have to know that's a Union soldier because they're blue. And it was weird because Confederate soldiers were yellow with gray
Where was the yellow?
on their top cup.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
Yeah. I'm thinking of movies that I've seen.
Well, if you, I mean, yeah,
I mean, usually you see the blue soldiers. I mean, I'm thinking of Glory.
right. But like, you know, I mean, I don't know. I'm like, you know me, I love the Civil War. But like, you know, this is the Jefferson Davis. But what do they have? They have the red flag, the rebel red flag, right?
Oh yeah. Why did they have yellow? That's weird. Anyway, I just think.
Well, in many ways, I think that they were trying to kind of depict some of the pirate kind of energy of like time prior.
But also, if you're, I mean,
'Cause
the
if you think
Union's
about it-
blue and
Right.
what else? Because the gray and the, I've seen
The
pictures of the uniforms, and the blue, the gray is kind of bluish sometimes when you see the.
Yeah, I mean that's under the same kind of color spectrum, I guess. If you were to look in RGB and go to blue and kind of get close to gray, it would go blue white, right? But you can go gray by any color to white, which is kind of creepy. But I think it's interesting because the rebel flag's red. Right? Like that's what you got there.
Oh, I had to look up. Yellow was the official color for the cavalry branch. Seen in
The
Pike
chevrons and
Nation.
stripes, yeah.
From
And the
butternut
yellowish or
bark.
tan uniforms due to using local dyes from butternut bark, especially as the war progressed and proper gray dye became stark and yellow meant cavalry. They picked the wrong color.
But also it became the homemade dyed brown, yellow butternut look of many Confederate troops. So that's another sign of scarcity.
Right? Where it's like, so what is the Chinese? China's red color military refers to historical Chinese workers and peasants' red army, the persecutor to the modern People's Liberal Army. The Red Army. And communism. So we're dealing with China that's communist. And what's weird is like, you know, Hitler was not communist. It was socialist, national socialism.
Right.
So if you look at Neptune and Aries, well, sorry, Uranus and Gemini, but with these, it's kind of a weird thing of like the one place that you would worry the most about is actually the communist / whatever is like a nationalist, socialist place. Or an empire, because Japan was an empire.
Mm-hmm.
What I think would be the, dare I say this on here? And you know what? People are going to think I'm crazy. That the one Western ally that will not be allies of the United States throughout this war will be the United Kingdom.
Then that would bring us full circle. You know?
That's what I have a 2018 post of me saying that's what is going to happen. It's all going to come back full circle.
Who said what?
I have an old 2018 post about all that.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you look at what's happening right now, like the British intelligence hasn't been sharing information with America because of the Venezuela thing. Then you see them pulling X away, right? So I don't know if they did that yet today, but UK, you know, is banning X and they're making this in Parliament, right? UK threatens action against X over sexualized AI images of women and children. And then California did that today. So it's kind of weird that it's like they're using UK Grok ban, but then they're, because Grok and XAI are bot X, right? They're trying to take that away and saying because of deep fakes, can X be banned under UK law, right? And they're going hard, like they're going hard over there.
But how are they?
Look at that. Even Keir Starmer is in talks with Canada and Australia to launch international ban on Elon Musk's X.
And they're saying it's for deep fakes, whatever.
Yeah, and child sex and all that stuff that are AI images and deep fakes. But really, this is where the only people that have had a voice to show us, like, why are these people being arrested? Or like Australia just put that ban on social media for teens, right? So if you think about it, it really would be it would be the United Kingdom and its commonwealths, technically, right? Canada and Australia.
Yeah.
That they're going to be dying for our help, but they're not going to get it. They'll see our bullets and our bombs to free them because they can't do it themselves. Yeah.
The thing I said about this earlier was, you know, like, it's just interesting when there are no restrictions. So, okay, we're going to pull back the reins and allow people to do sexualized imagery and allow people to do child porn or whatever. So then we can use that as the argument of why it needs to be banned. but I can't make a video of Jimmy Carter in the Lincoln bedroom doing disco, like,
Right.
because you can't use that likeness, isn't it? I mean, it's just interesting where the guardrails, and don't ask me why I was that was one thing I was thinking, wouldn't that be funny? But I could do a video of Nixon and Ronald Reagan going onto the Love Boat. Did you see my video of that?
No, I need to check that one.
I went on Sora once. I think it was on New Year's Eve while I was waiting for midnight. I tried to make videos that I thought were entertaining.
Yeah, UK
myself.
won't, Sky News, UK won't back down and row with Elon Musk acts over Grok's sex images, says the prime minister.
So then it's given something big to getting up in arms about because of, whatever. And that's why the whole thing
When you
is to be
see
banned.
everything spreading like the COVID news, right? That happened in 2020. You know that there's something way weirder going. It's not about that. It's about taking away.
And why people can't have critical thinking and think, why are you going to take the whole thing away? Like, why don't, AI can block that. Why not just...
We're obviously not going to be helping with those countries. So where are they going to go get help from? Probably China, right? Because what has China done? Like block social media. That's what they do to their people.
And the
China
reason
playbook.
People are giving is, Venezuela, which, I mean, I guess, it hasn't been roundly condemned by every member of government because there's a lot that we're gaining from it. But meanwhile, that's coming from the British Empire, the former British Empire, that once went into the Falklands and had their little war. I mean, really? That's interesting.
It's interesting because the new Poland PM, who he just stopped the ban on X in the EU, right? So that there was no ban officially in place. The Polish government had previously warned it might block X due to the platform's AA chatbot Grok generating hate speech. And then a recent action has been a presidential veto of the national implementation of a relevant EU law, right? So like Poland was trying to do it and they didn't, which is weird because Poland is the country you watch for with Uranus and Gemini at the start of World War II.
Yeah.
So the country that's not doing the ban, ironically enough, is Poland.
So they'll have to be invaded to make them comply. Maybe. I don't know.
Or it's all inverted, meaning that Poland isn't where it starts, right? It's going to be the opposite. It'll be starting where you didn't think, like America, right? I mean, it's very weird right now.
Yeah.
That argued the bill would grant excessive power to the government officials, resulting in an administrative censorship that resembles the construction of the Ministry of Truth from Orwell's 1984. And the international response is the opposite right now. The UK is also considering a ban, while Malaysia and Indonesia have already blocked access to Grok. X has since announced it is working to remove inappropriate posts and has implemented measures, right? Like, okay. Right? So, like, right? And then aligns with Trump to block the Brussels big tech fucking law, right? So they're trying to do that through all the EU, too. It's way bigger than people think right now. But that's China, because they just sold TikTok. They know that's the only way through. Like they want everybody on like WeChat. That's what they use in fucking China, right? So it's like, you watch, it'll be like the way that the HHS of whatever, I don't forgot what it's called in the UK for their health in Australia, but they're National Socialists. With a supreme leader who's the king.
I mean, so they're the empire? I mean, they already were the empire.
They were the Nazi Germany that nobody wants to see.
And this whole thing, too, about hate speech and the push to try to get people to be on board with that here. I mean,
it's not going to ever happen here.
I mean, but
unless
the issue is that
unless it's martial law, that's it.
it will be self-censorship because people are buying into the whole, yes, that's hate speech. To even question something is hate speech. I mean, yeah, it's really odd. And in some constitutions, I do think in the Irish Constitution, there is a clause that they can limit free speech, if it is deemed to be hate speech. So, I mean, it's a different idea of freedom, that it protects the group over the individual in some cases.
Which will fail.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, that's like total.
That's Hitler's decree in all of his socialist parties, right? It's about the motherland. It's about the Aryan people.
Yeah.
And pulling us up out of what we went through and all these things, and we need to all come together. And everybody, we need to cut the kids off from this, and they all need to be doing this instead.
So set up these little camps where they can go have their little jamborees, and everybody can learn the proper values of the nation.
Right. That's what you're seeing in Australia, UK, and Canada now.
And everybody might look at the footage of all those things now. A lot of young people might be like, oh, and that looked like fun.
If America gets Greenland, then that's cornering China fully. I mean, Canada, same thing.
But if America gets Greenland, we will be presented as Nazi Germany moving into Poland.
I was about to save my life. You just took the...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm glad you brought it up, because that's the wind that I was going to put behind our sails here, is that this is all about the EU and especially the socialist, nationalistic United Kingdom and Australia, Canadian front of that America's the Nazi. Right? And what's funny is Hitler never declared war. Everybody declared war on Hitler.
Well, then, I mean, I guess.
Right? So that's what gets really interesting.
So that's where then you'd see different states who want to stand up to the government. They'll be allying with the UK then, or,
Well, I don't think anybody did really well being in Nazi Germany, aligning with any other country, right? You were.
Well, hopefully we won't set up death camps or anything.
You were, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Talk about where also.
Knows where you go.
Talk about where the end result of all that transportation network in Germany was. You set up this whole structure so you can easily ship people around the country and move them out.
Right, but that's where paper, the Nazis, then the scientists all ended up in the USSR and America, right? This whole Russian front and the Ukraine thing has drained the EU, it's drained all these things, and now they're begging to try to use that as the excuse to build up the military in the EU and NATO and all this stuff, when really Russia and America will have the technology, are the ones in space, but it's China the one. So it's kind of crazy, because you would think the EU would be doing more to connect with the United States or whatever, and they're not as much. And China's doing its own things, and that's where they're going to pick China. Because the deal right now is probably that the UK, Australia, Canada, and a couple EU countries have all made a deal with China about the Taiwan deal. We'll make sure you guys get chips. Mm-hmm. Plus, America 2025 is the worst year in the EU's history of recording venture capital being put into the EU. It was the smallest year of money invested in Europe. We're talking the biggest deal was $10 billion. So that's so small, when in America you're seeing 100 billion, 250 billion, 500 billion, $1 trillion, right? There's so much money moving here, and in Europe it's just dead. It's no investment. And they're selling American stock because it's the peak of the stock market. So that's more of the World War II kind of stuff, but
Yeah. Well, I want to do a show on the Inquisition
yeah.
because I feel like going into censorship, talking about that, what's happening right now, I think there's some connections to the first Inquisitions in European history. I was looking at that once, just curious about it. I don't think we've ever talked about that, right? Because the Inquisition, to me, makes sense to talk about right now if we're talking about censorship, if we're talking about worried about Big Brother, because it was an effort for the state to bring in this outside authority to try people who were going against the dogma, right? Against belief, but using it really as a front to control people.
Right.
And it was a state, it was this external organization, it was the church. So that makes me wonder if there will be something in this era that's more like a church that functions in that way, that can be brought in to different states. Like the state of Minnesota could say, we would like to have the tribunal come in and help us enforce our doctrine of belief. I mean, it's interesting to look at the way that it worked back then. Especially if we think about the Roman Catholic Church, you could think of it as it is now, and whether it's involved in anything, but also just another type of agency working or having as much power as the church. Because the church gained power, as we've looked at before, because the states or specific leaders endowed it with power to be able to support its rule. To like Charlemagne becomes the Holy Roman Emperor, then he gets to have the weight of the church behind him. So,
or even have a new pope as an American, and maybe that's why we finally saw after the schism of the church from the English monarch and finally the reconnection, that now they have it looks better if you go after America, as these countries will, and go, well, the Pope agrees too, right? Like the Pope is an American saying America's wrong.
Is the Pope saying we're wrong?
I mean, he's already saying horrible things about America, right?
I didn't know.
He also his biggest thing lately was surrogacy, like surrogate moms, that it's ungodly to do that.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking he might not quite be the type of Pope that they were hoping.
Well, maybe it really was. I think my point is kind of like it would help the narrative from an Australian that no longer could see the real news on X. Same thing with a Canadian, same thing with a British person in the United Kingdom, or a Scottish person or an Irish person, to only see what their news is going to funnel through, which is an American Pope saying America is wrong, right? Or I just thought about the Five Eyes, right? Those are the intelligence agencies around the world that all talk to each other, that are our allies. Mm-hmm. Well, what is this new AI really? The Pentagon's Five Eyes, and now there's an eye in the center of it, but that's its own eye. It doesn't need all five eyes. What if the reason why we're seeing the X-Man isn't for just censorship, but because this is the American government having full control over all information around the world?
Yeah. What if? What if that's the 51st star, really, is that's the 51st star on the flag?
Right. That the whole world is the 51st state, the rest of the world.
But they don't know it. Anyway, we're really doing a lot.
I know, but that's actually kind of like what Hitler was trying to do. So,
well, I hope that we are not becoming the new Hitler of the world.
Somebody's going to be it. And ironically, all of Hitler's best men and families ended up in America and the USSR.
I don't know. I'm curious because I know we probably need to end, but what was King Charles's big? Remember when we looked at the icon he created?
Right. So it's the extra carta now.
Yeah. Doesn't it kind of look like that? Astrocarta.
Yeah, like he did that in like before he was king, though.
So it was Prince Charles?
Yeah, but no, it's right. It's right there. That's what it says.
Oh, okay. Oops, sorry.
And
I don't
it's
know.
the
What I'm
right
doing.
there. Like,
Oh no, not astrochart.
yeah, the astrocarta.
This. Okay. It does look different, I guess.
Right.
All right. Never mind.
I tried to figure out.
There's just a star
the
right in the
planets
middle.
in there and the revolutions, and there's a lot of weird stuff, but it's kind of not fully. If you zoom in on it more, like get closer in, there's one star, but that's a different star than the one
This one or the
over the
one-
T, right? Which is two L's, which is an X. If you understand John Dee's work. Right. So if you remember, John Dee is hidden in all of the United Kingdom's. 007 is for your eyes only to Elizabeth. And if you've studied John Dee's work, that a T is two L's back to back, which is 5 and 5, which is an X, which is a 10. So there's a 10 right there. There's an X right in the middle. And how weird that they created this X. I mean, I'm glad I was doing my Hypergate shit before X became the name.
I know. It's crazy.
People are like, why? Well, it's like, no, Leo King called that shit out fucking for 2 years to try and warn you guys. When you see this is when it all gets weird. And now this whole thing is the world against X.
Well, because
And
the
that's
United
so
Kingdom,
it's
it's
the
going to
United Kingdom against America.
for the
That's the
infinite
Pluto
wonders of
Aquarian
universe.
Revolutionary War, while the Civil War, while World War III.
And look at the Earth is in the middle, which is funny because
It's slammed in between.
in the, you know, like let's say you're an English king back in the Middle Ages and you wanted to have your crusades and be protecting the Holy Land. All of the maps they used always had England as the center. I mean, like, well, the Holy Land's the center of the world, but England or the UK, whatever their history, has always been putting themselves at the center. And so this, I don't even know. It's not even really showing.
I mean,
Europe.
if you see where the double A's are too, right on the right side, right, double A, and you see there's a star on the outside, and then if you look at the constellation, there's a red star under the first A, right? If that would be probably Scorpio to Libra, right?
Yeah. So is that Antares? Or
It's
is
weird
that
because
what it's-
underneath the E, after universe, right, there's a star there, right? Then there's a star above the T, which is really two L's, which is an X.
Mhm.
If you and this is all going to take John Dee's work because the British government is always going to use John Dee's work, including 007. All of their whole stuff came from John Dee, right?
And what about the orbit of, what is this?
Where
The thing that's orbiting around the whole thing.
that's the
Is that 3i
although,
Atlas?
so that is what's interesting is that Pluto, because that looks like more like Pluto's orbit, right? If you look at the orbit of Pluto, it could even be Aries, but really it's Pluto. I mean, I'll pull it up for people. It looks
Well, it has to be Pluto. Because,
so what is the only, right?
Yeah.
On the ecliptic here, right? Pluto does that.
And so weird how the whole Astrocarta then is encased by Pluto's orbit. But I mean, King Charles is a Scorpio. So I don't know.
And that it's in direct line with Earth. You see that under
Yeah.
the A to the T, which is really an X. So X marks the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually I can do this. This will be kind of cool to finish us off, to make people really like go to sleep tonight going, what the fuck did I just watch?
But even, is the Astrocarta a thing still?
Yeah, it is. I mean, because he said it was, right? And it's like, okay.
It's a proclamation that they have a duty to care for the infinite wonders of the universe.
Right? Like, hold on one sec here.
The interesting thing is you can see kind of the elements of the imperial crown for like the Holy Roman Emperor, but they're separate. Like, so he has kind of like this X leading down like a scepter kind of, but then this is sort of like the orb that he would hold. But in the Holy Roman Emperor's crown, that becomes part of it.
Start with the crown above. It's
Oh yeah.
if you go in where you see what looks like the Venus.
Wait, where is that? On the bottom?
No, in the middle of the astral chart, right? You see the crown on top.
Pattern of Venus, right?
Then you see a star. Then you see the T, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the Earth. So in the bubble between the orbits of what looks like Venus's orbit, right?
Yeah.
That's the egg of here with the crab at the top, Capricorn at the bottom, Aries, and then on this side, Libra, Venus is, they always showed it as a bull. Even for Libra, they didn't show scales because they show the animals.
Right.
Then if you think about the point,
It is, look at the parent and king,
right?
All the planets.
The parent and the king of all the planets, right? That is Mercury, when made perfect by a sharp and stable point. Then there's the fours, right? Okay. Of course, it's in this book where you understand. Hold on, I'll show people why the T is so important. This is the best book John Dee ever made. This is the secret to all the universe and astrology. If you don't know this, then you don't know astrology, straight up. Right here. So if you have two L's, they equal, because L in Latin and L is EL, right? If you think of L, it's masculine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to get to understanding the quaternary math system of Pythagoras and understanding how it worked in Latin or going down, right? It's a 5, but so 2 5s equal a 10, 2 parts. Then you can do it that way. That's a Mondanic cross, right? And then that gives you the 10. And so the letter L seems to respect the denarian value in the cross and has been placed in the middle position. He goes into the cross. So really the T is a cross, but it's not the correct cross. And then the egg that's in the center is the understanding of all the planets with the sun at the center, and that we really live in an egg, the universe, right? So that's always the biggest question. Is it the chicken or the egg that came first? It's obviously the egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
The anatomy. I don't want to like teach the whole Hypergate class all over again to people, because what happens when the egg, if the yolk were to spiral when we make it out, and you go from that position and it all comes out, then you see that's the sun's on the other side of that coming in with Saturn at the center, because this is the artifice, the artificial parts of it. The liquid of the yolk is, of course, the actual thing of substance. That's why eating egg whites is retarded. He goes into the T part, which is the cross. Yeah. So here, so like this actually goes into the pagan cross that was before the Christian cross. That the Christian cross is incorrect. It's false math, right? Because if you understand a pagan cross on a church, right? So people don't get this one, but unfortunately they finally are going to. It's a true cross. It's not a cross that's elongated, right? And there's always a centerpiece, but it's in the first images of Jesus actually see him behind that cross, right? So when you see like the traditional Christian cross today, which is the true cross that actually was done by the fucking whore mother of Constantine, right? So if you look at like old, like Jesus, ancient Greek cross, right? Why is it that you see that kind of cross with Jesus, right?
Right.
If you see this, it's false. But that's what you see all over the world. Like that's to get you to believe that story. But the real cross, so if I go to this, is that what's kind of crazy about that is it's creating a line that's already off, right? So you can't create an X. You can't create two L's. You can't create a true T because it's not. So the astrocarta T is a full T. It's not a undercase T, which means it's not a real letter, not a real math that can. So people follow that cross and they never get to anything.
Well, they get to the crown, right? They get to
they can.
authority that wants you to follow that cross.
Right.
Because that cross was created to support the, emperors that brought Christianity in to support their state, right? Their empires, not just the Christian tradition.
Well, and it says that the monad is self-sufficient. It doesn't rely on the external units or numbers. And that's the problem with the false cross that's like a cross like that, that's not in the middle, because then that would be an X. Yeah, you can't take a Christian cross and make that an X.
And that's the four seasons.
Right, correct. That's the cross.
It's based in nature. Right.
Right, but the fact that people are following that cross is the scariest thing that there ever could be.
Following the false
cross. Because it's separating the point. It's not bringing monads about how everything is together. All the planets fit into one monad, which is Mercury. But there's a shadow Mercury, the one that you don't see, which is the monad, because Mercury is dualistic. So the hidden knowledge of wisdom of the Hermetic is the monad.
And what is so if we go back to the first icon from the State Department's AI.
You can't even make Venus with the T that way. The first glyph of Mars was the Aries symbol at the bottom. It wasn't a 66-degree angle or whatever it is, Right? So like as he's building the monad, he's teaching people that it has to be, everything has to fully fit or it's not stability. That everyone hereby can learn a great secret. Because remember, he talked in secret codes, right? That John Dee created secret intelligence. He's the guy who created it all, and the world map, and the whole, and he's the best astrologer that ever lived. I mean, honestly, it's kind of scary because we're in a world right now where like it's in front of people's faces, but everybody's running to the false cross in the time of when you should be running to the true cross. Ironically, they call the false cross the true cross.
Right.
So the adjoining cross denotes that the distinguished artifice of the elements is required here. So you got to think of the half circle is the hieroglyph of the moon, and the whole circle signifies the sun. Right? But now there's two half circles which are separate, right? Through connecting by a common point. Everything has to connect to a common point, which is the center of the sun. That's what the glyph is, right? And everything must connect to there. So if it's all off, it's off in life. Everything has to be perfect and symmetric spiritual, mathematical. So the astrocarta is a really weird thing, because what you're seeing with like this whole military AI America thing and putting a star in the middle, the Pentagon and all that, and the 5 eyes and a Pentagon, and then you're seeing astrocarta, they're both not true. They're both false. They're both not following it perfect. So it's not gonna, but they're monads. Which, what is a monad? A monad is an energy that actually, by just being in its spot in itself, is the magic in itself, holding the energy together of knowledge, right? It's magic, actually. So when you think of the monad, when you think of astrology, it all needs to fit, or it's not true. It's not. Because every planet should fit in. So in astrology, if it's not that degree and it's not that angle, then it ain't it. Like, you know, so, but that's where people are like, well, I have Black Moon Lilith here, and blah, you know, it doesn't connect with this or that. It's like they get lost into astrology. The last part, especially because he really tries to show, as he's creating all this stuff, because like if you think about the Aries symbol, and this is what's important about what we're coming into, that if you think about it, so Mars, of course, is of course the ruler over Aries, but it's the sun's exaltation point is Aries. So it's where so if you think about it, it's where the sun exalts itself. And that's actually where Mars rules, and that's actually the symbol that creates Mars when you connect to it, right? But there's also, for the sake of recreation of the mind, that B most readily presents us with as many rustic letters as its pointed heads on it, or points ends onto its head, as it were, on its forehead. Because right, Aries rules the head, right? So Aries, whenever you do Mars, it has to be Aries at the bottom. If it's inverted, the head is now the feet, which is Pisces, which would be incorrect. So when he's building this, right, to have the monad, that's every planet, there's the feet, that's the Aries, though, the start that builds up the energy. And of course, the moon being the only thing that is of the subconscious and the shadow, that's at the top, but creates the understanding of the Hermetic world from the moon to Mars, from the whole thing and the connection. But that sharp, stable point is at the middle of the cross, but it has to be the true cross, because if you were to, behind that cross, go to where the sun's point is, right? It's a true X. It's a true. But people can't see that. So it's what you can't see. So the last thing I'll show people is like, you know, this is like this like, you know, ordering of the elements, the existing after the elements, all this kind of stuff, the seed rising again from his own virtue, the man of all hours, right? Lower Greek. So the Omega looks like Aries too, right? Or in a lot of the secret, of course, he used a lot of Kabbalah back in his work back in the day. There's a lot of understanding of that. This is where it gets really intense, and understanding how he's got it all based on elements perfectly. And of course, this is the monad right there. So this is where it becomes its finality. He wrote this in like 2.5 weeks in January of 1555. So the half circle, right? That's the world we live in, is like quantum physics, but quaternary math is Pythagorean. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then these are trans numbers, 3, 5. So it's kind of weird because we're at a place to where the sum has to equal 10. That's where everything is. That's why X is the Roman numeral for 10. And then we always do, you know, if there's 2 X's, then that's 20. The math that was done back in Greek math and everything was all based upon the sum, and the transposition's 24. And then the complete additions of the whole parts is 30 in here. So if you do 5, right here. It's at the bottom. The trans numbers of 1 and 4 is 5. 10 and then 15. And if you think about astrology and how it works, right? In 30 degrees, to do another half part of the circle is 30 degrees. To do that equals 360 times 10. So the math has to fit and all that. And that's what we're coming into as a world. Like that astrocarta, though, is kind of like a facade, but it's really close. But if I were like, you know, the only thing that can happen of consummation, which is kind of crazy because I know people think that term is used in different ways, but it really is that you have to be consummated, like you consummate a marriage, sexually, energetically, the horizon of time. The metamorphosis can only happen to get to the horizon of eternity. Like you don't get to heaven without God wanting to have sex with you back.
You have to be conceived into heaven.
You have to be wanted back in heaven. The same way that you were wanted
on earth.
On earth, yeah. And that's where they're going to go play the game to make people chase things to feel wanted, but for the wrong reasons. Mm. And that's where I think we're seeing a weird world that they don't want people to come into this higher. So this is like the celestial and the super celestial realms, right? Right. He who does not understand should either learn or be silent. Of course, these are showing air, fire, water, and the pillars. But if I don't know if you remember in this class, I taught people, I turned it around, and the horizon of eternity is where the sun is, and everything that he showed there. I also, oh man, it's the old days. I can't show it right now. But at this point, if you do an X from the center of that, then you break down the elements and the areas. And so that sharp, stable point does come right into the middle. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is this whole like trying to be this, but it's not. And really, this would be the real shape. And everything would need to make full sense in the universe. So what we saw with astrocartas does not make full sense. So it's an artificial version. And nobody's made a new monad that actually makes sense since 1555. That I would only focus on this image and nothing else.
So the new AI logo that you looked at, does it map onto this at all? Or what? Which one? Star in the middle, the AI.
Oh, you know what it reminds me of is like everybody got crazy about the new Cracker Barrel logo. Looks like the new one that they didn't go with, but right?
Yeah.
It's cheesy. I mean, honestly, It looks like AI just made that in a minute, you know, like, okay, I'll make a little quick thing.
But AI might have been drawing on these principles. You don't know. Anyway, we can probably guess it.
I think that's why it's important with AI that you have to implement this knowledge into AI. Which, of course, you know, Hypergate.ai has all the teachings of Hypergate. It's called Hypergate because the whole school was based off decoding, John Dean decoding Nostradamus and all that. But this is where I think it's going to get, I think this is your only saving grace, to be honest with you, is understanding this knowledge in here. You can tell what's fake and what's real off the bat. Yeah. So that's why, I don't, people they don't hear me talk about Jesus all the time because it's like the Jesus everybody's connected to in their minds is the one with the fake cross that's called the true cross. And the Greek Jesus is not the same Jesus because it was before 325 AD. And everything that people think of Jesus now is connected to that.
We're connected more to the Roman.
Right. And I think that there's there's going to be some new religion or figure that's about to pop up that, it's going to sway everything.
I hope he doesn't have Flavor Aid.
Flavor Aid, or he's the new person dating Erica Kirk or something, Like they've set her up as a Scorpio to be the I'm so happy for her. She deserves love. Whoever the person is coming in with her to push it will be scary.
Well, interesting.
I think it's funny too, because he wrote that, of course, to the one republic at that time. That there was an actual free country with like not a monarch, right? Like when he wrote to the Holy Roman Emperor, who was the only one that was at that time like allowing these very rare, crazy, out there discoveries. Like he was obsessed with them.
That was my favorite part of
Right? Like
that show, Discovery of Witches.
Oh, yeah.
The show, right? Where they go and see the Holy Roman Emperor. But I don't know if it was,
remember?
John D
John D was back at his lake house, but in England. But he told them that that's where Edward Kelly in the book of was there. So they go, and then remember Edward Kelly's down being like held captive in the like gallows of some weird down underground thing, but he's tormented because he saw the book and he can't hold that energy. Remember?
Yeah. But was he the one that was outside? They were like, well, we need to go at night.
Yeah, they go at nighttime to go get a reading. Remember? They say, we want to get a reading.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the times are in the middle of the night, you know? And then they go down there, and then I forgot who they run into. That I think it's because there's a time travel thing or whatever.
But wasn't that the emperor who was down there, or she later sees the emperor?
She later sees him. Like he doesn't really. He kind of falls for. He's not really in the way. There was other people there that was trying to get it.
Yeah, I don't remember who.
It was like another creature.
Yeah, wasn't it the vampires or
no? I think it was a demon or what were they called in that one? Yeah, demon. Because the demons, remember, like weren't getting their proper fix and all of it. That the vampires and the witches had taken over the coven or whatever. But yeah, anyway. I think that's really wild because I think that people, I think, really can use this energy for finding the truth of like way outside the box of what's being presented as the box when that's not the box.
Yeah. Just look for the box that has the right measurements.
Right. I mean, what's weird about with Uranus and Gemini is it made America obsessed. If you watch any Indiana Jones, right? Like obsessed with going into the old archaeology, but also into discovering weird stuff. So we were doing it just as much as Hitler was doing. So like, this is going to be the most interesting period of our lives of like discovery, but also hidden discoveries. And only people in the know are going to get tapped. So if you can understand that, then you can understand the rest, but it'll be great. But I think, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of people lost because they don't get this. There's only one thing that's a guarantee is the planets, right? We know the new moon, the time. The only guarantee that's written and that you can see of the planets as well, that they can all move into one symbol, which ironically is a planet. And astrology, the ruler of astrology is Mercury. So it's not just the parent, but it's also the king of the planets. It's birthed through the ideas of that.
Yeah.
And then it all comes back around. I just want to show the invert one because there is a shadow Mercury. Most people don't know this, but Mercury, there is two Mercuries. Most people just don't know how to see it. Right here. It's what you don't see. So when we think of like how you can imagine astrology in your head, but then when you're putting all that shit together in your head and then you're coming out, that's that Mercury.
Is that supposed to be like?
So it's not physically seen.
You can't see.
right? So the monad is the physical understanding. The understanding itself is the Mercury that is the shadow hidden Mercury.
Yeah.
Or that Mercury is closest to the Earth as much as it is closest to the sun, based off, depending on the Venus and Mercury orbit around the Earth. That actually, it's not Venus that's closest to the Earth. It's also Mercury, depending on the orbit time. So Mercury is the closest to the sun, and it is the closest to the Earth. And if you don't believe that, Mercury can be closer to Earth than Venus. Yes, Mercury can be closer to Earth than Venus at certain times. So that should blow your fucking mind right now, right? That Mercury is the closest to the sun, no other planet, and it's the closest to Earth. But because people don't understand math and the understanding of the universe, then they, what? And where's Uranus going? Gemini. So it's going to be both Mercuries at full capacity. And the only people that get the understanding of the secrets of the universe are the Hall Pass, which is what everybody from Nazi Germany entered the Operation Paperclip. Nobody else. You think we were reaching for Japanese people because all they came up with was like, just fucking become a fucking suicide Kamasaki.
I don't know.
That was their technology. Like, okay, die with the plane. That was their technology. Like, oh yes, sir. My samurai sword with me from my father's father. Okay, yeah, okay. That's how desperate they were.
Yeah, well, yeah.
All right, well, a good show.
Yep. It went to places I didn't expect.
No, and that's
But
what
that's good.
This is where it'll blow your mind. This is where Mercury comes closer to the Earth, right there.
Yeah.
Right there. Than Venus. I love that shit. That's a question I've done for like 10 years now, and everybody gets it wrong.
Oh, really?
I'm always like, what's the closest planet to the Earth? Venus. Oh, it's Mercury.
Well, you could say Venus at certain times.
Correct, but it's actually the closest. Longer periods because Mercury's faster. So right there, it's a longer period closer than Venus.
Mm-hmm. And then there it shows Venus closest. Yeah, this is a good animation.
It just makes you rethink the whole universe and why Mercury is the parent and the king. The parent that seeded the earth, the king, because it's with the sun. And why? Because Mercury's on both sides of the sun and the moon. Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Gemini. 2 Mercury. A physical closer one, Virgo, and the one closest to the sun, Mercury, Gemini. Or Virgo's right next to the sun, literally too.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the sun and the moon are at the top of the monad. So, and that covers Venus with the moon being exalted in Taurus. But anyway, that's a long fucking story.
Right.
It's a long one.
We don't need to go into it here.
And balance is Saturn in Libra exalted. So if you see in the monad, Saturn in its formation creates, right, like Saturn in Libra. So you think about the exaltation points too. That this is what'll blow people's mind. Like to end it is that Saturn is right there, right, to make in the middle of the T coming down the cross, and then you see Saturn. Jupiter is when you turn around and do Jupiter. You can see Jupiter if you turn your head around.
Mm.
So both sides of the Aries is Jupiter, Saturn.
Wow.
So, but where does Jupiter exalt in Cancer? So that's at the base, and that covers those cardinal signs at the bottom, which is always the point at the bottom is a cardinal sign, right? And then, of course, the midheaven or the top is there. It's funny that he has Cancer at the top, right? Because in a chart, we like to think of, well, at the top of the chart, it's that. But when you understand the seasons, and especially the ecliptic, it's actually the top is Cancer, of the Tropic of Cancer, because he did all the maps, right? So the bottom is the Tropic of Capricorn. So that goes into weight. And that's going to be 500 years old in 24 years.
Wow.
So I think we're a little behind. Like the world, and we're judging our life by all this external intelligence. Even our own brain is external when we externalize it as a intelligent form. When you have to bring all of it in the universe together with you as one, right? Because this book is literally just the sacred symbol of oneness. Of course, in Latin, right? This is the hieroglyphic, the monus hieroglyphicus, right? The hieroglyphic monad. But it's about the sacred symbol of oneness. And then, if you don't understand, you should either learn it or just shut the fuck up.
I like that phrase. I think that
because that's Mercury. You're learning or you're speaking.
Yeah.
But you can't hear no evil and speak no evil if you don't understand it. But people are speaking evil because they're hearing evil because they don't understand how to judge either side. So what they believe is evil is actually not most of the time. You have to find a neutral space too, and where it's all just one. Anyway, that's coming in there because I could teach that fucking without stopping.
Well, and people could go watch Hypergate.
All of them. How many Hypergate? Three Hypergates.
But the first one is where you really start to go into this first, right? I mean, that was...
Yeah, and then this connected with Nostradamus, which blew my mind, and prophecies.
Yeah.
And then this connected with everything else. So it's been 500 almost years since anybody... And that's what connects with the same Neptune Aries time of the Spanish and the Inquisition to get the obsidian glass that he used to channel spirits.
Yeah.
So I've just been waiting for Neptune Aries my whole life because I already know some bigwig's gonna go, hey, Leo King, here's some fucking crazy shit we found in Mexico area and fucking down the Aztec shit. Here you go.
Will you share with me at least when you find out? Are you going to tell everybody? Or will I have to? It'll have to come to me too.
It was weird though, because I read that book and like that's what gets really weird about the Bible and the King James Bible and all that stuff, because you had to use a King James Bible, which I bought, remember? And like you had to go into the middle with nobody, right? The hidden books of that. And that's in there, the teachings that are about speaking with spirit and to heal without medicine.
Yeah.
So, all right. That's fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be back 2026.
I know.
I don't know what we're going to do next show, but it'll be good. I think there'll be plenty happening.
Yeah. I can't wait to see.
Yeah. Because we're 12 days away from the end of Neptune Pisces. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting.
It'll be big. It'll be massive. Massive. Because if you think every show we've covered, like this bridging point, just with Neptune, is in the most insane stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, good luck out there.
Good luck.
Don't get in a car and try and run over a nice person. That's probably not what the
Don't shoot
monad
anyone
would say
in the
to
car.
do.
Yeah, just stay out of the fray. Go get into your egg.
Go get in your egg. Yeah. Don't shave your head either, because then you're shaving off your antennas.
And don't drink Flavor Aid if you don't know where it's been.
I wouldn't drink any of that powdery shit. I know.
And look for the juice and concentrate in cans.
Yeah, they got rid of that.
And what? I can't believe they got rid of it.
So,
Anyway,
adios.
bye.
Instagram and TikTok flood you with 10-second horoscopes, clickbait. No depth, no truth. People beg for the Leo King to do it. And I only ride out when it's gotten bad.
One man's riding, truth in hand. Leo King's the last to stand. Eyes wide open, fire inside, cut through shadows.
Floods you with 10-second horoscopes, clickbait. No depth, no truth.
Leo King rides into the fire. Truth crusader, taking it higher. Breaking chains of fake desire. Burn the false race, truth empire. Astro gimmicks, shallow lore, false predictions, spreading more. Leo King, he won't pretend. Real astrology to defend. Stars align to guide his way. Standing strong, won't betray. Loud and clear, his message rings. Authenticity breaks. Leo King rides into the fire. Crusader, taking it higher. Breaking chains of fake desire. Burn the false race, truth's empire. No illusion, just what's real. Passion, border, heart of steel. Ride forever, never tire. Lead us on through smoke and fire. Leo King rides into the fire. Truth crusader, taking it higher. Breaking chains of fake desire. Burn the false race, truth's empire.